This is Banter for the People. We are live at VidCon tonight. Everyone's a little bit like juiced up. This is a perfect conversation during this period of time. Everyone on the couch, I believe, is kind of like in this interesting, like kind of purple space within politics.
Yeah.
I'm post-partisan.
At least I'm like a big purple guy.
Yeah.
But within that context, I just love the ability to like continue the banter about like where we are culturally, politically, socially, all these different things. And I think you all are doing such an incredible job of contributing to the conversation like a real authentic way. And within that, I'm excited tonight to see like where this exactly goes. One, we have too many mics, with too many people, with way too many opinions.
And very loud
that's
voices.
The perfect thing because, you know, I was able to talk to my wife and be like, I think I found a lot of people that like to have the type of like discussions I enjoy. So I appreciate everybody being here. I want Tiffany to kind of introduce everybody a little bit because you're doing a really unique thing, I think, in this space that you're doing such a good job of driving community and bringing people together that definitely are isolated right now. So I want to kind of push it on to you to be like, yo, thank you for bringing everybody together and introduce everyone here for us tonight.
There's a lot of pressure. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, first, my name is Tiffany Cianci. I am the host of TikTok Town Hall, a space where we bring in politicians and people from both sides of the aisle and definitely in between. And they get to ask politicians anything they want, no filter, no moderation, no veto. And we create accountability through access. And then on my left, we have 5149 James Lee, who is 5149 because he's always 5149 on any issue. He's never staunchly right or staunchly left. Like 80 to 90% of America, he's somewhere in the middle, and an amazing investigative reporter for Breaking Points News. And thanks, somebody just I admire a great deal. And according to Joe Rogan, his number one source of news.
That's right. That's
James.
facts.
Next to James on the couch, we have Amy K. Nelson, who is an amazing advocate for criminal justice reform, specifically in the arena of unlawful seizure.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And she's done an amazing job advocating for exposure for what sort of like beyond the stretch of what we think can happen in the criminal justice system to everyday Americans. And she's done a great job advocating for her family, her husband, and the other people that suffered just terrible persecution at the hands of billion-dollar corporations. And so I am a deep admirer of her. Just to her left, we have, I'm not going to use her whole name because I don't know if we do that, but we have Erin from Logic and Liberty. And she is the most amazing debate moderator and host on TikTok. She hosts very regular Logic and Liberty panels where she brings people up and encourages difficult conversations. Those difficult conversations come in many forms. They can come in any topics. And she invites people from both sides of the aisle and everywhere in between to come in and speak. I know. I go in there a lot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
To her left, we have Ken, who I think used to be more partisan and is drifting more purple these days. Mm-hmm. He's somebody that regularly engages in difficult conversations and challenges a lot of the concepts that one side of the aisle might have about another side of the aisle, whether it's appearance or sexual orientation or financial situation. His conversations really lead to interesting ways of identifying that people don't always look like the other party thinks or have the money the other party thinks or believe what the other party thinks. And then we have Luke David Johnson, who is amazing at jumping on the internet to tell everybody all about themselves in a way that really reminds us that a lot of us feel the way that he does about issues without always knowing where he actually feels partisan-wise on an issue. And then somewhere floating around the house, we also have Jesse Crossan, who may choose to come in and join us when he's over here. And Jesse Crossan is an amazing rehabilitation and criminal justice advocate that I am very proud to know and very proud to panel alongside this week when we go and talk about technology and its importance in criminal justice reform. Oh, there he is.
Well
Jesse
done.
Crossan, everybody.
It's
I
Jesse
love it.
Crossan.
Did I do okay?
There we go.
You did amazing.
I tried.
I'm going to get Jesse a mic. Now, within all of this context, you all are like, everyone has such a staunch opinion, but you're also so well researched. And I'm interested to see where this conversation goes tonight. What, through VidCon, just like within this first day, what's been kind of coming up, I guess, to the surface that you feel like on this couch, you're in like kind of this weird isolated environment, but together you have like some level of unity. What's kind of like bubbling to the surface?
I don't know if unity is the right word. We have a really strong mutual respect for one another. And I learn more from them than I ever learned just reading online. Like, for me, I find that every person in this room knows more than me about something. And I respect the research that they do. I respect the amount of effort and genuine like contributions they make to the communication on issue. And I also respect that they listen to one another and learn from each other.
That's the coolest part, is that there's no, like, I don't know what you call it, partisanship. There's just, we have all different opinions and we say them and we're like, hey, that one sounds good. And then this one doesn't sound as good. But then we don't hate each other at the end of the day. It's not like, oh, we're going to cancel anybody.
We party like it's 2007 in here.
2007.
You know, back when you could still agree to disagree, be friends, and say, you know, I don't really like what you said on there, but I love you, dude.
Well, it's like we live in this world where we need someone to be a hero or a villain. We need someone to be a hero or a villain, like on the right or the left. And we can't find a way to talk to people in the middle or have shifting opinions or different opinions. And I feel like in this group of people, it's always shifting. It's always differing. And that's so much power. I love it.
I mean, the media needs us to have heroes and villains so that they have somebody to propagandize too.
That's correct.
The more that we're heroes and villains, the less we're a team that's working together to break through all of these horrible things that we're all dealing with as a country.
Yeah.
I just think it's really difficult in today's day and age to have productive, fruitful political conversations. And the only way we're going to come up with the best possible solutions if you sit across from someone who doesn't agree with you. They're going to be the most diverse and the most well thought through solutions. And so I don't know where we got to this point where we just immediately shut down someone who thinks differently, whereas it should be seen as a challenge to reflect on your own beliefs and your own values and take into someone else's perspective and try to grow your own opinions.
Yeah.
And going off of what Logic said, I do agree with that. I feel like, especially with like the political climate right now, a lot of people have egos and a lot of people don't want to be wrong or right. And people don't want to come in the middle and have conversations because people have let their emotions get the best of what they're thinking, and they let the government and the media control the way they think, the way they talk, the way they live their life. And I think that it's caused a big political difference in our world, and I think that it's very important that instead of us fighting, we should come together and talk. But the thing is most people nowadays, whether it's left or right, they don't want to drop the ego. They just want to have their vendetta against one another. And I think it's important that if we start talking about those problems, I think that we could actually solve a lot more instead of fight a lot more.
Yeah.
One of the things I really appreciate about the people on this couch, and largely the conversations here in general, are that everyone sees the other as a person first. This isn't a topical thing. This isn't a partisan thing. It's, you're an individual. You're a human being. You have wants and needs just like I do. I think, criminal justice reform really is my focus. And when I first started talking in Virginia, I didn't go to the echo chamber. I didn't go to people who agreed with me. I went to the principal opponent of any level of criminal justice reform, and I sat down with him and I said, hey, like, how are you? And he's an interesting guy who everybody liked to put into a box because of his political stance, but he had a special needs kid. He had things he was struggling with. He had things he really believed in, things he really hated, some things I really agreed with him about. And I felt like because I was able to sit down with him as a human being and connect on that level first, we could actually come to some sort of compromise, to some sort of realization about where we had common ground. Because as long as I'm actually dealing with a human being who is more like me than unlike, it's a lot easier to come to that common ground than if I'm dealing with an enemy or somebody I'm trying to conquer or somebody I'm trying to overcome.
So I think it's pretty interesting that with social media, we are all people first. Like, the crazy thing about independent media, or whatever you want to call this, news media of just individuals, is that instead of being representative of some corporation or some serving some political audience, because that's what a lot of the news has become, is picking, like, if you're MSNBC, you have a liberal audience and you're going to serve that audience and say whatever they want to hear to maintain their viewership. We are all just individuals and we don't have that backing. I was going to say we should each go around and speak about our management companies or who is sponsoring us. I'm pretty sure that none of us would have any of that.
Yeah.
And
None of us do
Well,
that.
can I ask a question? Because one of the first sessions I went to today was about sort of the new media versus traditional media. And the question is, can independent media truly usurp traditional media at some point, or is traditional media just going to try to pick us off one by one as we grow to a certain size? Say, hey, Tiffany has 1 million followers. Let's see if I can co-opt Tiffany and give her the riches of the world and say, okay, you're going to be all set as long as, hey, there's some certain issues we're going to come in and we're gonna tap you on the shoulder and say, you say this when we want you to, otherwise you're independent.
Right.
Is that something that we can truly overcome as human beings with flaws and that kind of thing?
I'm gonna tackle that right out of the gate and say that it will absolutely be something that we all, as we grow, are gonna face. I'm gonna say right now, in my situation, taking the money would be so good for my family, and they have thrown so much money at me. I was offered well over $100,000 in the last election to endorse a candidate, and a lot of people took that money.
Was it
A lot of people.
Was it Kamala Harris?
First it was Biden, and then it was Kamala.
First it was
First
Never.
it was Biden, and then it was Kamala. I got offered under both.
That's crazy.
Did it go up more with Kamala?
Yes, quite a bit more.
Offered by who?
Considerably more.
Whoa.
I published them.
Offered
The briefs came, but I didn't know who was funding them. The briefs came from the agencies. But I'm going to say, and it would have been so good for my family.
Yeah.
Like our legal battle needed that money.
Right.
Right. And it took everything I had to say no. But I also looked at this and I said, I don't believe that I can grow and maintain this audience to the place I need to take it from if I really want to make a change, if I don't maintain my integrity. And if I just made this little sacrifice this one time, it would lead to bigger sacrifices down the road. And I sat down with my husband and I said, I can't do this. And he says, I don't want you to do this. He says, I believe it'll be so much better for you in the long run to just stay independent and be who you are. Everywhere that I've tried to go to talk to about doing a podcast, they've been like, we want you to be purple, but just, a little more left purple or a little more right purple. I'll never forget the call I got the day RFK joined Trump. I got a call from somebody in his inner circle, not him. He would never ask me to.
Right.
But somebody in his inner circle, and they're like, listen, we're giving you a heads up. If you start moving to the right now, you'll make a lot more money. And they were just kind of warning all the people that have been backing him, like, something's coming, right? And I said, I can't do that. I'm so sorry, but thank you. I appreciate that you gave me that heads up, because when you're partisan in this space, you make a lot more money. The sponsors know where they want their money. And the audience, they've been so conditioned to chase the dopamine that comes with the reaffirmation of their flawed belief system, right? And I'm not saying it's flawed because it's what they believe. It's flawed because it's what they've been fed, and they're not critically thinking through it themselves, because echo chambers create this constant stream of dopamine. And the world is a crappy place right now. America is a crappy place right now when you look up and you look at the news. So that dopamine, those are the little things that get us through the day. I understand why people chase it, okay? Having your beliefs challenged doesn't feel good. It especially feels bad if you suddenly realize maybe you've been wrong on an issue. Maybe you've been wrong on an issue with severe consequences for someone else or a population. I've been there a lot, okay? And I'm always very open and honest about it. But we're so conditioned at this point by these algorithms to chase dopamine. And dopamine does not exist outside an echo chamber in the political space. And so, but I also think that given that we have 80% of Americans right now that are identifying as somewhere in the middle, and this awakening of really strong influxes of education all around us, that we're facing a situation where people are desperately looking for others that feel like they do, because they feel like they're crazy in the parties right now. And I think that we're going to fill that void, and I think it's going to be spectacular for everybody, because I think we're going to reignite conversations that have been gone for almost 20 years.
I think so much of that is so right and so incredible. And I think there's also, I think there's a world where I understand why you didn't take that money, and I wouldn't have taken that money either. And there's a world where we create businesses around the work that we're doing, because it is work, right? And I think it can be an and where you can have a brand partner, or you can have a, I think we don't need to be these pristine, like, we will not take any payment.
Yeah.
Like journalists and investigative reporters have always been paid. So I think there has to be that and what I hope, and I don't know how you make money doing this and having this stance, and I haven't figured out how you could do that. But here we are all talking about the parties and partisanship, and I believe the systems are fucking broken.
Me too.
The systems are broken, right? And
Yes.
I think that both parties are co-opted.
Absolutely.
Right? And there's a grift when you have 95 or 98% of members of the House of Representatives and the Senate that are multimillionaires, and they didn't know were multimillionaires when they got there.
Yep.
And they're not being paid lots of millions by us.
Yep.
So what's happening, right? And it's the machines, it's the system, and I think that it's just power. And I think that and I think as the independent media, where we stand, like our job can be to take down those power systems and those power structures and say, there has to be something different. There has to be something better. And if we keep fighting on the right and the left, we're never going to stop and look at the systems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you.
I almost think that like when you are independent and you have a brand sponsoring you and you're selling air conditioners, it's pretty obvious when you're talking about politics that the AC company that you is not a problem.
Yeah.
The problem comes when you're a network.
Private
and it's
equity.
blind money. Yeah.
How many videos of my head go viral because I'm taking down HVAC private equity firms?
Yeah.
I was going to say.
So,
One of my
but
best
if you're a
topics.
network and it's just blind money, you're just being paid by the network, right? Like Tucker Carlson had to leave his network to speak his mind. And it's the same with almost everybody is jump shipped from network television because there are interests, there's money there that is undisclosed. I mean, sometimes it's obvious, like Pfizer, right?
Yes.
Pfizer sponsored this broadcast.
Number one
obvious,
advertiser on television.
But, you know, there's a lot of money there that you don't see and you don't know what the influence is. Like when Sean Hannity is up there talking, he's speaking for a lot of people that are not advertisers. You know what I mean? There's a lot of power and control in that type of media. Independent media, individuals like us, the reason that you hear stuff from social media or you see stuff on social media that you don't get to see in network television is because for once the incentive structure is different. And that's the only place that you find that. And that's why we're lucky to have TikTok. We're lucky to have Instagram finally participating and saying like, okay, we'll let you guys say things. Because they realized that they were this is the future. But yeah, so that's why we're really lucky. And the cool thing is like when I meet you guys as individuals, and I think that's why the audience likes it so much, is, you know, this is the one thing that is like AI proof, right? Because you can replace all these people on TV with AI. They're just going to say whatever the network wanted them to say anyways. And I mean, like, they're not really doing any kind of investigation. What Tucker did with Ted Cruz, it just blew everybody's mind wide open. They're like, oh my God, he's actually doing like real journalism. Would never happen on Fox. That was never going to happen. So this new media, like if you really take it, it can be the one thing that I think defeats AI, because people are going to start trusting individual human beings and their own brand. And like, you know, because we're responsible for our own brands. Like what we say and do affects us and it carries with us. It's the weight on our shoulders to bear. If I was to go and lie to my audience, and people a lot of times will disagree with me, but they know that I believe what I'm saying because it's my brand. And if I destroy my brand, I'm done. Whereas like I can go and work for Fox and say all kinds of crazy crap and it just reflects Fox.
And we just say that's what was on the teleprompter.
Right. I was
But
just
we didn't
reading
write
the
the
news.
teleprompter.
Right. I didn't know.
Yeah.
How do you deal with a situation where you're like, I know my audience probably wants me to say this, but your intuition and your research is like, this is not what I'm seeing. You know, or even sometimes for me, a lot of the times, because I'm like a smaller person in this whole world of it, it's just like my friends. I'm like, oh man, I know darn well, like I have like a best friend that doesn't want me to have this take. But in what I'm fighting for is, one, once you kind of drop your parties, which is really cool, you can see the value of like the right friend and the left. And a lot of the times I'm like, hey, I need the right to step up this time, or I need the left to step up this time based on kind of specific issues. But what do you do in the instance where your audience is like...
I have a disclaimer for this. I actually give in my live streams all the time. So I actually have like a little, it's not a script. I mean, it's become one.
Okay.
But I always say that this is a space that is incredibly welcoming to the left, the right, and the middle, because 81% of Americans don't believe they're left or right. They fall somewhere in America, in the middle in America. And I'm speaking to those 81% of you that maybe agree more with one party or the other, but overall your belief systems fall somewhere in between. I am not going to be someone you agree with on every issue. If that's where you find yourself in a political party, that's not a political party, that's a cult. Every single one of us has unique opinions, unique life experiences, and unique reasonings for what we're doing. I've never met personally a single person that voted for another candidate because they wanted to hurt somebody else. They did it because that's what they felt was best for their family and the best choice they could make given the information they had. So when I say something you don't agree with, I encourage you to challenge me. I encourage you to have respectful conversations. I hope I learn from you and I hope you learn from me. But I do not hope that you ever believe that you're going to agree with everything I say. Because if that's happened, we've lost the conversation and we need to find a reset somewhere.
Well, I think you have to do that early for your audience. You have to say, hey, this is who I am.
Yeah.
I'm always going to say what I think, no matter if you agree or don't agree. Because I think a lot of people go and they want to chase a bigger and bigger audience. So they start going down and saying things that they think their audience will like. And now they've grown to, let's say, 500,000, 1 million subs. And they're like, oh, fuck, I can't go against them because this is now my livelihood. Versus going early and saying, hey, if you want to follow me, you're not always going to be, you're not always going to agree with me, but I'm always going to tell you what I think.
Exactly.
And that's, you just have, I mean, audiences are like, you know, you just have to train them. You just say, hey, this is who I am. Versus other people, other people want to go in a different direction and say, hey, I'm just going to do the party line thing. And that's me. That's their brand. But if your brand is like, hey, you actually care about what you say, then you have to just do it early and often.
So like when you get like, when Joe Rogan calls you out and he's like, yo, this is where I get my news, right? How do you fight that urge though to give his audience what they want on your next post?
Because I don't care ultimately about, let's say, going on Joe Rogan. If Joe Rogan likes me, that's great. But that's not why I got into the business to like grow my fame. It's like, hey, I want to get, I mean, I could have made so much more money just working in consulting.
Yeah.
It was so easy to make money. I just maximize shareholder value every single time. Very simple formula.
You're smarter than me then.
But I'm here.
I'm here because this is the last thing I got.
I don't actually want to be here. But since I am here, well, let me clarify. I want to be with all of you. No, I would have preferred to be some kind of normie. It's like, oh, I don't see anything like
Put me back in the Matrix.
Yeah, put me back in the Matrix.
Wasn't
exactly.
it so good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
The days
I go back
before-
in so quick.
Well, and I think another thing is, as long as, at least for me, if I can defend my position with whether it's logic, reasoning, or morality, hey, I sit well in that. And also having a level of just openness to be like, challenge what I believe. Show me something, prove me wrong, change how I think, like bring me information. I want all of the information. I want all of the perspectives, like feed it to me. And if I change my stance, I'll explain exactly why. And if I don't, then I'll tell you why as well. But I think when we just like lead with emotions because like we say this and it's going to feel good, I think that's a really shaky road to build a platform on. Whereas if you can explain to someone clearly and, you know, within reason why you believe what you believe on a certain issue, I think they're going to, hopefully if they're reasonable, they're going to respect you. The ones who don't won't even listen to you, well, do you really want them like following you anyways?
I don't know how many people. I'm one of the oldest people on this couch. I'm the oldest.
You cannot tell, but you can't tell.
So I'm one of the oldest people here, but I also I don't know how much. I don't think it's encouraged enough anymore. But I was raised during a time where to be on my debate team, to go to competitions on debate when I was a kid, we had to learn to argue for the side we didn't agree with. Mm-hmm. And so I was trained to always form the best possible argument for the person that I disagreed with on why I was wrong. And in my brain, every single day, I'm like, why does somebody else believe this? And is there a chance that maybe I've got this wrong? Yeah. And I want to know how to make the best argument they can make. One, so that I'm prepared to have those hard conversations. But two, so I can challenge my own presuppositions. Yeah. Because my ego, I have ego too. We all do. We're human beings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But there are people that are opposite me on an issue that believe with every inch of their being they're right, and maybe from their perspective they absolutely are. Maybe for their life experience they're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. I end up in a lot of foster care discussions. I grew up in a foster household. I meet tons of people that are like, going into foster care is the only thing that's going to save this kid. And I know other people that say I never would have been SA'd as a child had I never gone to foster care. That part. Okay? These are two different life experiences, and each of them are entirely valid. And that's why when somebody says you're evil because you voted for X, it's just not true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not. Is there maybe somebody ever that voted just to spite someone? I mean, it seems like a really big waste of time.
The Trump lever was pulled a few times.
Yeah. So my point is that every single person I've ever spoken to that voted for Biden or voted for Trump or voted for Obama or voted for whoever they voted for just took the information they had access to from the mainstream media that fed it to them generally, because they were taught to trust legacy media, and took the life experiences they had, looked at their kids and said, neither of these feel good to me, but I'm going to choose the one that might be better for my family. And they just hoped and prayed things would get better. And at a certain point, right this minute, this opportunity we have that's happening is we have this mass awakening that people are realizing that we've had 30 years where no matter who we elect, present company included, right? President included.
Right.
No matter who we elect, we somehow end up with the exact same economic policy that only serves billionaires and the exact same foreign policy that only serves billionaires.
Right.
And so people are realizing right now that there's not really any good choices. So they just choose the one that might be a little better for their family, but they want choices. They want
Right.
better choices.
We deserve so much better.
We do deserve so much
Right?
better.
Like we deserve a choice that means something.
But
We
the
deserve
problem
a system
is,
that doesn't serve the
It
billions.
costs $1 billion to get elected.
Yeah.
$1 billion.
And that's the system.
And that's the broken system.
Mhm.
Yep.
Well, and it's crazy because to me, like if you look at campaign, and we don't have to nerd out too far on this, but if you look at campaign election reform, I would argue 99% of Americans would agree that it's a problem and that we need to pursue it.
100%.
100%, yeah.
100%.
But like nothing's happened.
That's because it takes a constitutional amendment,
It's-
which require all the states and all of the elected
But
officials
you would
to
think-
allow it.
With that many Americans who support it, it should be a no-brainer. Like that should get done.
We
It
only
should be
support
getting
it
done.
if we lost, though.
That's the thing. It's like the
So
people
it's
in power.
always 50-50.
Exactly.
And the people in power
Yeah.
are never going to take away the things that put them in power.
Yeah.
Like, why would I change a
Why would you
system that
vote for-
elected
yeah,
me?
exactly.
Like, I'm not
But like
changing
if we
that.
took a stand and it was like I'm only voting for candidates who support this initiative and this effort, like, and I understand that we're in such a divisive place and we're a massive country. I get that, but that to me is indicative of like something that's fully broken in the system. Is that again,
Sure.
Americans can say we need this. This would absolutely reshape politics. It would get back to a government that serves the people. Yet the needle's not
No,
moving on
because
it.
they're just going to say that now is not the time for that. That makes a good sense, but now is not the time for that because we're dealing with
That makes
fascism
too
or
much
we're dealing
sense.
with communism. Do you
Right,
want fascism
yeah.
or do you want
Right.
communism?
Yeah.
Well, and that's the
where
game.
that
Selection, and we
campaign
kick
finance
the
will do
can.
that next
That's
time.
the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game, right?
Can
But
I
that's
ask- are-
something.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say that's something that I think social media can change
Right.
because it takes billions of dollars because the old system was to advertise your candidate, and now individuals have voices, and everything comes down to, in my opinion, in this new age of media, authenticity. And so what you were asking, how do you build the courage to contradict your audience? It's easy. Know that when you do the L take, as far as your audience is concerned, you are building authenticity. Because what killed the networks, the reason that nobody's watching network news anymore is because they have zero authenticity. When I go and turn on the news and watch Jesse Walters do his little shtick, I know for sure what he's going to say.
It looks exhausting.
And he's never going to do the L take if I'm a
Carefully
Republican,
curated.
right?
Yeah.
And if I go watch Rachel Maddow do her shtick, I know that she's never going to do the L take as far as I'm concerned as a Democrat. But that's not what the real American is. The real American is not that little niche audience that doesn't worry about where their future is going. They don't really care about their kids. All they care about is politics. That's a very lucrative audience, but that is not the American people. So they've all turned off. The largest voting bloc in America are independents who don't watch those shows because they know they're being lied to.
Right.
The people who want that fan servicing that those shows do are a very lucrative segment of our population. So to actually change our government, you have to have people like us, I believe, representing real individuals. And if we have people on our shows and we talk to them, because Ted Cruz can't survive a podcast. Not going to happen.
Right.
And so, you know, Pod Save America or whatever, I've never even seen that podcast, but I think that's
But
a
like the
great
pod
name.
did not save America.
Because
No.
but the idea that podcasts could save America could be that social media, you know, whatever form, is able to catapult ideas and individuals who represent those ideas in a way that is not campaign financed, right? Just organic, just really just people with great ideas. How many times have any of us heard someone say to us, boy, I wish you would run for office.
Yeah.
Right?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, that is the chance that we have of defeating the system. It's not going to happen, in my opinion, any other way than organic individuals take office and become public servants and actually go and vote for these things that we
Well,
want.
can I add something to this really quick? Where it's actually self-serving to be authentic because
Yeah.
the other side is like if you work for corporate news, you might get a great salary. For example, Jesse Waters, all of these people, they're doing great. But what happens when they collapse? When they inevitably will collapse? For example,
Their
CNN when they have to
brand-
lay off people. Now Don Lemon is in the
Trash.
wilderness and
Yeah.
he can't do this job.
He's
because
actually
people
great-
how
he's
do you do this job?
He's actually grifting for Galaxies on TikTok Lives.
Yeah,
so.
he is. He is.
No, he's
Thriving.
not.
He's grifting.
Grifting
For
for
Galaxies?
Galaxies.
He wants Galaxies bad or what? Give me the Galaxy.
Those are a big deal.
He
though,
has-
No,
right?
it's only $10.
It's like
only
TikTok.
$10. And actually,
It's
it's
like
Galaxies are on
it's
TikTok
$4.
Live, yeah.
Well, after they take the cut, it's like $4. But
Okay.
from my perspective, I think too with like
One
what's
Galaxy
going on
is-
is like all of the main media. Like once you sign that contract, you know, you're controlled, and we've all had that conversation. We all know what happens once you take the money from whether it's left, right. Regardless, you're going to be controlled. And once you get controlled, then you're no longer able to actually say what you want and the authenticity disappears. And I think with what happened in our media, especially the last 30 years, is that people wanted the check more than they wanted the check more than they wanted the authenticity. And I think that, like you guys were saying, I think it's very important for us to all run. But the problem is we don't have $1 billion effing dollars in the bank to run. For example, like I wanted to run for House Representatives in my district, but I can't do that because the guy that's in my district is literally a veteran. He went to college. He's a millionaire. There's no point I'm going to be him. And so for us that want to actually run, we have to, the thing is the funding. None of us are going to have $1 billion to fund it. So how are we going to, like, what is the stepping stones for us to get in the office? Because it's impossible right now.
It's to
Well, can
be
I
as
don't think it's
I
impossible.
don't. What can I just say? It's like, is getting to office really the way to make change? I feel like you've done way more change outside of
That is
office
true.
than
I
you would
think
have
you
done
can.
in office.
Yeah, I think
Can I-
advocacy is a big part of it too.
Yeah.
So I actually I say the same thing. I get asked literally dozens of times a week if I'll run for office. Dozens. I was on the Pawn Stars Pawn After Dark podcast
Okay,
like
that's
2
dope.
weeks ago. I've done it twice. Rick Harrison is a big fan of my private equity content,
Okay.
which I didn't know.
Yeah.
I met him
Let's
at the
go.
inauguration.
Go Tiffany.
Literally.
And I was there filming like 2 weeks ago. And at the end of the podcast, Rick was like, "So when are you going to run for office?" And I said, I tell him the same thing I tell everyone, which is the moment I believe I can do more good in there than I'm doing out here, I will run for office. That moment. But until that moment, I'm going to keep making change the only way I can. And out here, I'm doing more good than I can do in there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're good at making money. They're not good at doing anything for the American people.
That's true.
And he said, "Well, I'll write you." I mean, he went very on the record on the podcast. Was like, "I'll give you a fat check if you go right now." And I was like, "Thank you. I really appreciate your confidence." He's like, "You're what we need." Here's the deal. I don't think it's impossible for us to get decent people elected. First of all, they're going to die. Really,
That is
really
true. They're
effing
all
soon.
old as
I know,
hell.
like they are dying.
They're dying because they are so addicted to the power and they are so beholden to the favors they have traded for that power
Yeah.
that they can't let go. That's why we have
But
Diane.
this is not new, though.
It-
Like,
it
as
is
far as
new,
the
though.
evolution of, like,
Yeah.
the
No,
crazy person wins.
It is new. Kings used to stay in office forever. Okay, kings did that. Okay, popes have generally done that. But elected officials generally, did some terms, and then the people thought they needed new energy, and we went and elected new people. Or they retired and allowed new blood for the good of their party. At this point, what we have is an aggressive addiction to power so great, so intoxicating, that they are willing to sit there with dementia in a wheelchair, unaware of where they are. Dianne Feinstein. It was so sad.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. Mitch McConnell. Okay, this is not a one-party thing, right? And literally not know where they are, voting on issues. We just had
I
a
respect his
representative that disappeared to a dementia ward for 5 months, and no one knew, right?
Who was
There's a
it?
Texas rep.
Texas. It was out of Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a Texas rep that was just found. She hadn't shown up for work in 5 months. They found her in a dementia ward.
What the
It's not a joke. It's not a
This is
joke.
not a joke. This happened.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
God.
but what I'm saying is that they're not there. I believe most people that ran for office 30 years ago and are still there went there idealistically. They went there and were like, "I'm going to do good things for my community." And then there was that first sacrifice. Now, compromise is essential to governance, and a lack of compromise is where we are right now, which is terrifying. Compromise is essential to governments. It's one thing to compromise on an issue for the good of the people in your district. It is another thing to compromise your integrity for money. And the problem is that first they compromised for the good of their district and passed some bills. They're like, "I'm doing okay." Then they realized it was getting more expensive and they said, "If I don't have more money, I can't keep doing good for my people. So I have to do things for money." And that was the compromise they made. And the moment they chose the money over the good, it began a spiral that would become so addictive. I mean, the average senator has to raise $13,700 a day. A day to get reelected. In a non-election year, the average House of Representatives member has to raise between $6,700 and $8,600 a day. Wow. You tell me how you serve a single person in your district when they can't pay you that much money, and you spend all day, every day. They spend 78% of their time fundraising.
Yeah.
That leaves what exactly for the American people? Right?
Not enough time to pass a bill.
Exactly.
Not enough time to pass. No, unless it's a TikTok ban and you're getting paid by
Right. They're just going to push it back for 3 months.
Yeah.
We can do that in a week. No
Yeah.
problem, because we're getting paid to do it. And do you guys, how many of you are aware of the policy percentage? The likelihood of policy percentage?
I think it's like 2.
So in America, if 99% of the population supports an initiative in any given year, there is a less than 30% chance of that bill passing.
Wow.
If
That's higher than I
99% of
thought.
America supports it,
Yeah.
there is a
Yeah,
less
too.
than 30% chance of that bill passing. If 90% of the billionaires in America support a bill,
It gets passed.
100%.
there's an 80 to 90%
Yeah,
chance of it
100%
passing.
passed.
How do you serve the American people like that? But I believe we could change it. I believe we can change it. I believe we will
But how do we
change
get them
it.
out of office?
So that
Wait them
I
out?
actually don't think that's that hard.
Wait them out because most of them are.
No.
I mean,
It's a really simple calculus. Right now, every single person that is clinging to the power to their desk to keep from flying off the earth of power, like literally, they're just hanging on for dear life to that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single one of them is doing a very simple calculus. They are less afraid of losing your vote than they are of losing those dollars.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty easy change, actually. Unfortunately, we're so good at this point of being told who to vote for and being told who to hate that we haven't been willing to do it. But I think we're getting close. All we had to do, it would take two cycles, one presidential election, one midterm. It takes 6 years to overturn all of Congress, right? Because some of them run every 2 years, some every 6, and they're staggered. But if in 2 consecutive representatives elections, we voted out 10 incumbents, the calculus would shift immediately. We saw it in 96 with Ross Perot, and what happened when he gained 19.5% of the electoral votes. Okay? Bill Clinton, who did not run on a willingness to balance the budget. Both parties with a bipartisan Congress were so terrified because it came close to nobody getting the electoral votes needed. They were so scared that we saw a balanced budget. He eliminated 125,000 federal employees in his first month. Why is nobody, people are screaming at Trump, but no one's saying that Clinton was a monster for doing it?
Weird.
And then in his first year, he
Hypocrite.
eliminated 380,000
Yeah.
jobs, federal jobs, 1 year. And then he balanced the budget, made massive cuts everywhere. And we had our first budgetary surplus and the first decrease in our deficit in decades. And the last one, that was the last time we had it. But they became more afraid of losing the votes than they were of losing the money.
Yeah.
That's all we have to do. That's it.
Well,
It's
and
not
I think-
hard.
Jesse, I, want to
think-
hear what you had something you want to jump in on with this.
Yeah.
Well, I had a couple things. First of all, I think there's a danger of saying I'm doing more good out here than I am on the inside, because if there's nobody running for election, there's nobody actually there doing good, we don't really have a good option. We have people that are going to continue to make compromise to cling to power, as you said, which means there really isn't a good option, which maybe you can then scare that person who doesn't really have an ethical compass into doing the right thing, but they're not going to continue to do the right thing as long as they don't have a gun to their head. So I do think there needs to be new blood introduced into the arena, and that does have to come from non-traditional places. And if it doesn't happen, we can change all the things in the world about the voting block. But again, until that hammer is unhocked, it's just going to go back to normal.
And
I agree with
how do we as the people who find themselves in the middle a little bit on this, but I also I'm middle in the sense I want people to continue to disagree, just continue the discourse. How do we slow the pendulum down from always going it always feels like it gets higher and crazier every single time that it drops. I do feel like it's on us a little bit to help each side understand I love you both. And we can't keep on doing this thing.
Well, I think there are a lot of rising moderate voices. So moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, left of center, right of center. And I think the more we can amplify those voices, the better off we're going to be. Because to me, the politicians are always going to leverage fear every single time. And so you're going to get a lot of fear from the far left. You're going to get a lot of fear from the far right. And I think social media is a massive tool for us to hopefully temper those voices a little bit with some reason and sensibility back into the conversations of like, hey guys, yeah, I don't really agree with this far left policy, but I also don't think we should like swing it all the way to far right and go nuts. Like let's settle in the middle. Let's bring it back and try to have conversations that can appeal to both sides in a way.
Well, the problem with social media, though, is that fear is what gets the most attention.
100%.
So
Right.
we're
Exactly.
incentivized to create sensationalist content all
Right.
the time. So then how do we act against those incentives?
But you're already doing it. I mean, you're doing it actively. Tiffany's doing it. Like there's so many creators who are doing it actively without doing, because let's be honest, we could grow our accounts overnight to millions by rage baiting.
Yes.
Oh, 100%.
Easily. Like we could do it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would say I do
absolutely
rage
could.
bait, but
No, I don't think
you
you
rage
do.
bait. I really like the rationale. And
I think I create sensationalist content without being partisan. That's what I do, because I am trying to say, hey, you should care about this issue, but I'm not going to give you a partisan.
But
You
James, you're
live in,
focused
like,
on truth.
yeah, I mean,
That's the difference. You're
we live
focused
in
on
a
truth.
sensational moment.
Yeah.
Right. So
But I think you all
no
are.
political affiliation. Period.
I think you all are excessively optimistic about this, though, if I'm being really honest.
Yeah.
Because if any of you read Careless People about Facebook and the influence on elections around the world, the reality is that social media also creates a tool that allows us to funnel people into even further partisanship, even further divide,
Yeah.
in which case we're talking about a good that is happening, but we're not talking about the massive kind of harm that's happening.
Right.
And there is money behind that harm. There's not money behind that good. So we can say all these things about, oh yeah, we're bringing people together. And if we're having small conversations, that is impactful. But is it nearly as impactful as the billion-dollar impact or the multi-billion-dollar impact of those partisan forces that are using social media to further divide people?
I'm an optimist, and I know I'm going to sound crazy by saying this, but I really believe that AI is going to save us here in this instance because, again, the only people who are going to survive are the authentic ones. You have to be able to take an L. You have to be able to come in and say, I don't have an extreme position on everything. Because when you do, and there are plenty of social media influencers out there right now who I feel are propped up by outside organizations.
Name them.
I know, I would love to.
and put their pictures.
Larry Sisson.
Their following is not legitimate. It is not real. Okay. And it may appear real. And it gives us this fear and to think like, oh, wow, this kind of crazy off the wall content is doing really well. But it's really not. I think everybody here has an extreme position on something, right? Like it's a personal thing.
Sure.
But you have a bunch of different positions and some are crazy and some are normal and some are, like you have different positions. When you find the creator, if you find, like I said, going back to the networks where every position is extreme. Like when you watched MSNBC, like it's comical. Like it's not real life. These are not real people.
It is a good time.
You couldn't.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so over the top, and it's meant to be that because it's sensational on
Yeah.
purpose. Now, if you do that content online, and I see creators that do that content, I immediately block them, and I encourage everybody to block your
Please.
senators,
Please.
block your congressmen.
Yeah.
I block all these people because it's a grift. It's nonsense. None of
Yeah.
these people believe anything they're saying, and so I want to clear it out, and I want the signal, and I don't want any of this noise. It's all nonsense. And I think that the average American is sick and tired of the person taking advantage of them by trying to get under their skin. You know what I mean? Like we make jokes about it. And when you make jokes about it, it means that the majority of us realize, tonight at 11, are your children safe? Like it's, that what they're doing, right? You know what they're doing. You know what these influencers are doing. And the majority of us don't want to be patronized. We don't want to be manipulated.
No.
We don't want to be, we don't want sensationalism.
Until we get scared,
names.
though.
I was
Because when
gonna
we
say-
get scared, we do want to plug into a side.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
do see
that's
that where we
true.
retreat. Because I'm predispositioned to be like a hardcore Republican. Like straight MAGA. I just have way too many people in my life that have taught me way too much. I'm here, right? But like I do get like when any story comes out, it's like if I'm gonna fall one way, I could easily always fall right until I kind of figure it out. And I see my friends who don't even want to find the middle, and they go during, especially like right now, we're seeing so much of that.
What kills me though is like, over and again, we're talking about the parties, we're talking about partisanship, where it's like the thing we should be getting mad at is the system. Like if we're talking about how we change this moment in time with the far right and the far left, it's like the way we change it to come back to it. It's like it's campaign finance reform, it's term limits. Like it is the system, it's systemic things.
Yeah.
And if you look at like the origin of America, like our origin story, right? Like our superhero origin story, like the guys that signed the paper that said we'll die for our freedom, they wanted a very different America than the one that we have today.
And they're not
100%.
happy with what's going on. I
they'd
can
be
tell you
so
that.
unhappy.
They're
No,
shaking
they'd
in their
be
Even,
graves.
like,
so
Jesse
I
and
think they
thought,
would get
and-
it.
Well,
I personally think they dude, because I always get confused when people are like, this is the messiest time to be alive. I'm
No,
like, this
it's
is
not, yeah.
guaranteed the best possible time that you could ever exist on Earth, full stop.
Yeah.
However, tomorrow's always concerning.
Yeah.
And I think tomorrow is less concerning than it was 100 years ago. Okay. But we owe it to the future to fight just as hard as the other people fought for where we are now.
But see, like, I disagree with the fact that like they would kind of get it, right? Like if you look at the fundamental premise and like it, you know, my background, right, is I was a hardcore liberal. I was on Obama's National Finance Committee for years. I'm a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I look back, you know, I fight for criminal justice reform. So does Jesse. If you look at the Bill of Rights, 10 rights that they gave us, right? 4 of them have to do with the rights of an accused American.
Yep.
4 of them. It was so important to the founding fathers because they were all accused criminals.
Wow.
That part.
And so, you know, but the system that we have today is like we barely have a jury trial. 98% of people plead guilty because you have to pay millions of dollars to fight, because they take away your money, because they threaten your spouses with indictment. Like, and you might not think like the criminal justice system, the failure of it is a failure of the American promise, but it very much is.
100%.
It very much is, right? Like our liberty. It is our liberty, right? And it's just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so without that as a fundamental premise, where do you go from there? Like, I don't think the founding fathers would think that this is how we ended up.
I think they'd be very
horrified by it.
ashamed.
I look at what our current Supreme Court, because she does criminal justice reform. I do access to justice reform, which they're hand in glove. And I talk fiercely about the fact that Americans generally, by and large, believe in this premise that if somebody ever hurts them, they can go to court and seek justice. People believe that's real. That's not real in America right now.
No.
Every single family, every 4-person family in America right now doesn't even realize they're beholden to somewhere between 90 and 500 on average arbitration agreements they don't know they signed. And they don't realize that arbitration denies your right to a jury trial. It gives all of the rights in that dispute to the corporation you've entered that agreement with. You don't know you signed most of the time. And that you're going to go to a monopoly court that is governed by billionaires, where in a regular court of law, if you're in a dispute with a big corporation that hurt your child or hurt your family, you believe that you can get justice, right? There, you have to pay to get to a judge. You can't fight like they can.
Yeah.
And in a court of law, you are almost 50-50 in your likelihood of succeeding if you get a lawyer that takes you to court, because that means they see merit in your case. But in arbitration, you have a 3% chance of winning against a corporation.
Well, and how many Americans even know about this? That's
None.
another part of the
I
problem.
didn't know until 2
It's
weeks
like,
ago when I saw
we're
it on a
so
pod. I was like, oh.
clueless on
doing
so
it.
many of
You're
these
doing your
deep-rooted
thing.
issues.
Yeah, we're trying to educate as many people. I educate every.
So much work.
Like I was literally at the hospital a few months ago getting a colonoscopy, which
Fun.
yeah.
Party.
And literally on there was an arbitration form, and I went up to the counter and said, "Do I have to sign this form?"
Yep.
And she said, "No." And I said, "So you will." So I said, "They will do the surgery if I don't sign this," and they said, "Yes." So then I went back to the waiting room. And I said, "Hey, page 6 is an arbitration form. By the way, it waives your right to a jury trial. I recommend people
I'm so
not
proud.
sign this form."
I've never been more proud in my
Oh
life.
my God, I love
Waiting
it.
room
Yeah.
activism.
I'm so proud of you.
And people don't know this.
Is it always that easy though?
I did an
Yeah, right.
arbitration
I know,
episode on his
sometimes,
show.
I mean,
Yeah. No, but I feel like I
No,
had to do
most
my
of
part
them
because
you
nobody
can't
knows.
opt
It's
out
like, oh, I'll just sign this. I was like,
no,
dude.
I know. We like you go get a manicure and you sign an agreement that's like, and if we kill you during this manicure, you're out of
Yeah.
luck.
She's not wrong though.
Sorry.
Every spa has one.
Yeah, no, when I got my nails done a few weeks ago, there was a thing on it. It was an arbitration. After you told me about it, and I was like, I'm not signing this at all. And I've never had to sign anything before. They made everyone at the spa
And
start signing things.
More
It's
than
crazy.
90% of them are non-negotiable and non-opt-outable. If you're signing in at the emergency room and you're racing to get through it, you're
Yeah.
signing on an iPad.
Yeah, because you're not
You
really.
can't see that form.
Nope.
And if you're trying to get your kid treated for something life-saving and you're rushing to get them in that room, you don't see that form.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
your mom just suffered a terrible fall and is needing a hip replacement and they need to go to a rehab facility, which may become their long-term care facility, and you're signing those papers, you don't see that form.
Yeah.
Or if your dog just got hit by a car and you're racing to the vet and you are at the front, here's the thing. First of all, in our founding principles, access to the law was almost codified as a right. Access to justice was codified as a right. But the law back then was a simple apprenticeship program. Okay? Anyone could become a lawyer. You didn't even have to have like a diploma. It was an apprenticeship program. And then it was about 35 years ago right now where law schools decided that they wanted to create barriers to entry so that the poor could not become lawyers. They didn't want poor people to have people that represented them in the justice system. So they created law schools. They never existed before that. It was an apprenticeship program. You could do like pre-law and a bachelor's, and that was it. Harvard did not have a law school until like 30 years ago.
Is that true?
I didn't know that. That's
40.
wild.
Was it 40 at Harvard? 40 at Harvard. They were one of the earliest. And even today, there are still 2 states where you can take the bar
Yeah, that's insane.
and never go to law school.
Just
Virginia
read the
and
law.
California.
Well, like
Okay.
that's where you're kind of speaking to like AI. Hopefully, like
Right.
that is like I can just be like, is this good for me? And it's gonna go. This is crazy.
I
if
mean,
you
it
sign
depends on who programs the AI, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Right.
But it also,
Yeah.
but it also depends on the judges, right? Because you're going to have judges in the system, and if you look at the American system right now, the majority of federal judges are former federal prosecutors, so they look at the law a very certain way,
Wow.
right? Because they were people who locked people up, who, from my perspective and experience with the DOJ, like broke the rules.
Yeah.
And willingly broke the rules because there is no accountability. It's like the judges, they're still, and there are some amazing, incredible judges,
Sure,
right, who do, an incredible job. And it's a system where the work experience of most of the people on the bench was the experience of choosing to take a job where they were going to lock Americans up.
Yeah.
There may be amazing judges. I do not believe there are amazing arbitrators at this point. No.
That's fair.
I'm
That's
very
fair.
serious.
That's
fair. I mean,
Arbitrators are taught from the moment they join AAA, which again has a 92 to 94% monopoly
So dumb.
in the United States. Any other industry that reaches that level of control in industry in the United States is in violation of all Sherman antitrust laws, and they are to be broken up. But because only lawyers can break up things and all of their friends are making too much money, they're not even touching this.
Are they publicly traded?
No, these are private organizations that control your life, and they don't have to follow the law. But that is your new court system where the billionaire always wins. Okay? All 3% of cases see any benefit to a non-corporation. And there are 1.4 million cases a year. 50-50 in the courts.
That's rough.
3% there. Okay? But all I'm saying is that when they join the American Arbitration Association, where people believe they're going to get justice and they're paying for their judge, they are immediately taught that if you rule against the corporations, they strike you and they won't choose you anymore. And so your $50,000 a week paycheck disappears and they let you go. And they get more arbitrators that will rule for the corporations because AAA makes a butt ton of money.
So, did you ever have a politician, now that you've been really discussing this publicly, do they ever come up to you and say, "I'd love to run on this"?
All
Or
of
is
the
this like where all
wanna
politicians
do it,
say-
they just won't.
Gotcha.
It is incredibly bipartisan in their disdain for it. But none of them are willing to walk out on that limb because every corporation that donates to them relies on arbitration to protect themselves from any kind of public accountability.
Yeah, it's
Well,
against
and
their own
it's
interest.
not just corporations.
No.
We talk about campaign finance too, right? It's the interest groups.
Yeah.
The lawyer
Yes.
interest groups.
Yeah.
Like they're
All of the
very
PACs
powerful.
use arbitration. All of the people that fund them. Arbitration is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
This is just one issue, right? We have so many issues we can talk about. I don't want to get in the weeds so much. But there are things that we talked about the Founding Fathers. There are things that they could not possibly be okay with. And this is certainly one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
Here.
That's why it's always depressing. You need to change it now.
I'm always optimistic. No, I do. This is the thing. I am starting to see. It is weird because when things happen, I do see my friends fly to their sides, but I do see them slowly creep back to where I'm at. And they go, I'm kind of willing to talk about this again.
Yeah.
Right. And I did see that happen more than I've ever seen it in the last like year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where people were
Me
like,
too.
I do want to start to talk about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that really made me optimistic.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks has been kind of weird.
Yes.
There's been a lot of shit.
Yeah, it's just
That's
too much.
It's a lot of unprecedented times right now.
Yeah.
I guess so, I have optimism
Wait,
with
what
that.
happened?
Yeah.
Is there something I missed? I
Yeah.
don't-
Did I miss something?
Well, so I guess
A lot happened.
What do you? Yeah.
how do y'all deal with that your audiences expect you to know everything about everything.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's so hard.
Especially like in a debate type format, it's super intimidating, and I don't know everything about. I think the first step is like, who does?
Right. Nobody knows everything.
Like, why are we setting the bar at that level? And I
We
think
expect everybody to.
I know,
though.
but that's
It's unrealistic.
that's a
Because
them
we live
problem
in a-
who
well,
expects
but,
it.
we
Like,
live in a world where someone read a Reddit thread and they're like, well, now I'm an expert.
I'm an
Right.
expert. I know
Because they saw
everything.
something on
I think just
Wikipedia.
like
Yeah.
I think being honest about what you know and what you don't know about. I think also this like weird rush to establish a position on something that's developing, like a situation that's developing. How many times have we seen like they jump at like the suspect is XYZ? 2 weeks later, it's like you were way off on that, and that was completely bad information.
Yeah.
But I would love to see people kind of just sit more and read more and listen more before they rush to a position stance. Like,
But it is the
one
difference
hot
between
topic,
like
and we're not going to get into it. I'm not going to expand on this,
20,000
but
and
like
10 million
foreign
views, though.
policy wise, there's something going on. I haven't formed a position
We need
because
to
I'm
expand
still.
on that.
No,
Well,
we're
yeah.
not. Nope, James, it's too late. Sorry, it's too late. It's too late tonight. It's too late. We don't have enough time tonight, James. We don't have enough time
That's
tonight.
more of a
but-
coffee chat.
But also, it's like uncomfortable
You need
because
a
I
morning
feel
walk.
like
Maybe a drink chat.
right?
Might be stronger
Yeah,
than
that's
coffee.
going to be a 4-hour conversation. No, but like I don't have a
Like I said.
well-established position, and I feel like people almost look at me strangely, and they're like, "Well, like what? I don't feel like I have enough information to confidently say I stand here or I stand here on this, and it's okay to not take a position on something if you're not fully informed. Like let's normalize.
The
Yeah,
that.
but you're-
audacity of you to not be full of crap.
Can we normalize that, please?
Yeah.
though?
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
a very
So-
disciplined position because the social media incentive is to take a position immediately.
Yeah,
It's like, this is
exactly.
breaking news and we need to do this right now.
But that goes back to authenticity. That goes back to authenticity. That goes back to like
Well,
no, like speaking on. Don't speak.
But people
Right,
just-
because
but
who wants to watch a video? It's like, well, I don't have a position quite
Don't
yet.
go to
Versus like, breaking news.
Don't
Yeah,
go to
but-
ProPublica and establish a decision right off the bat.
No, but like James, for a guy like yourself, who I really trust your intuition and your
Yeah.
research on things. When discourse is happening, I go, man, I do want his take. Right, so it's like you all are becoming leaders in this space, and
Joe
your
Rogan
intuition and your the context that you come
But I
from.
wait. I wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, I
yeah.
don't because sometimes I see something happen. I'm like, I want to post about this, but I'm not
yeah,
ready.
because you
to
don't have
post
enough
about it.
information yet.
Right, I don't
rush
have
to
enough
judgment.
information on
Well,
it.
and there's people who you can go to who are informed in that area, and that's the take you should take. Don't just assume someone that like you like to listen to
Yeah.
has a solid take on every single. Because
Yeah.
again, we don't know everything. We
don't.
can't
Sure.
know everything. So like if you're going to, I don't know, like a lawyer about nutrition take. That's probably not a great idea. Like give them some leeway. They probably don't know everything. So I think we have it's the information age, and there's so many creators, and you'll see the people who have great knowledge and great background in various topics. And I think if people, again, just be honest, like, yeah, I don't know, I kind of feel this way, but I also don't know as much as I should to form a solid stance and defend it at this time. Like that's an okay disclaimer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I 100% agree.
I think admitted ignorance really benefits a person's position. Because if somebody says, hey, I've got this diet pill, it has no side effects, you'll lose all this weight, it's perfect, you're like, that's full of shit.
Yeah.
But if somebody says, hey, this thing will grow weird back hair and it'll make you smell funny, but you'll lose weight, you're a lot more likely to believe it. And I think the same is true if somebody says, hey, I don't know anything about that topic, but I do know about this one. Here's what I know about it, here's what I believe, and here's why I think that's important. I'm a lot more likely to listen to that person because they're admitting their humanity, they're admitting their human weakness or fallibility in that exposure. And I say, okay, well, I'm more likely to believe the thing they say they do believe. So I think the kind of clickbaity social media desire to kind of fill every void for every person, yeah, I mean, that's an empty thing. And that's incumbent upon us to realize that this does not actually work, this is not actually real. And I think the more we're willing to be vulnerable and be honest, it goes back to the authenticity, which creates genuine connection with the audience. But it also goes back to just the human reality of accepting our limitations and therefore being able to speak with authority on what we can actually speak with authority on.
Agreed.
Yeah, and for me especially, like when I first started doing like political stuff, like I was in the cult. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to anybody. I was 100% a Trumpy. I was all for Donald Trump, and then I just started like researching and realizing that like I don't really agree with everything that he says and does, and I realized like I don't have to. But when I started making content about it, I noticed a lot of Republicans were not happy with it. They're like, well, how can you be a Republican but you don't support everything he does? Because that's not what it's about. We're supposed to be able to question our government and be able to say like, you can do this, this, and this, but I don't like that you're doing this, this, and this. And why are you doing that? And so I started, educating myself and trying to get more perspective. I think that's a very important thing for people, especially in the political climate, is perspective. Everybody wants to, know everything, but it's impossible. You can't do it. And so even before, whatever happened with my account, I've started being more transparent with people. Like, I don't know everything. I don't know. I'm 24 years old. I know I'm a child. I barely know. I know a lot for my age, but I have a lot to learn. And so because I had a platform, I told people, I'm straight up, like, I'll be transparent with you. Yeah, I know a lot about some certain things, but there's also things that I don't know, and I'm not going to talk about those things. Like what you were saying, when there's an event that would happen, I don't want to immediately make a video about it because we don't know the information, especially because the news isn't telling us the truth. We have to, especially all of us here, I guarantee we all have to find our information on our own terms because
The
you
most
can't trust
important question
anything.
about a suspect, though, is how did they vote?
Yeah. Are they voting for Trump? How dare you? You're evil.
That is crazy.
That's
Yeah.
what we're.
It is
That's where we're
crazy.
at now, though.
Yeah.
And it's sad because we should be able to have these discussions, whether you're left, right, or in the middle, and be able to question one another. And instead of having angry, violent discourse, we should have positive discourse and be able to question one another and not agree on everything, but come to a common ground. And I wish that we could do that as a country as a whole. But like we've all been talking about, like the media is feeding into each side, the left and the right. They're feeding these lies. They're feeding this propaganda. And people that most of the time too, most Americans don't have time to really study. They're working. The economy's terrible. They don't have time to watch the news and educate themselves. So they expect the news to tell them everything. And, the propaganda is all, I don't know if this is what I heard. I think it's all Obama's fault. He's the one that did it, but that's just me. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. I'm sorry. But
I think it's
It started
Citizens
way before
United's
him, but
fault,
yeah.
we'll go
yeah,
on.
well, we'll
If
stop
I have
that.
something to blame, it's going to be the Supreme Court and Citizens United.
Yes.
Citizens United was the end of the American
Okay, yeah, there you go. I
It
don't want to
was.
say.
Do you agree?
Yes.
I
I mean,
Yeah.
if
A lot
you
of
want
it,
someone
yeah.
to blame, you blame the Supreme Court and Citizens United.
Yeah.
Because the moment that corporations realized they could, in an unlimited way, buy our politicians under the guise of free speech, simultaneously, they realized the only way we would let them is if they kept us so divided that we couldn't work together to fight to stop
And that's
it.
where we
And
are
so
right
it is
now.
the Supreme Court's fault, but it is also the legislators' fault who made this happen. And the Supreme Court upheld it. But
Yeah.
it's a shame on all
You
of
know,
them.
Yeah, it is.
but there's a problem that I have with that, like, and this is a very long conversation. I don't want to go too weedy on, but they decided that corporations have free speech because they are in the shoes of a person
They're people.
or an entity.
people.
I really like. I do a lot of third-party interviews, and I was
Yeah.
interviewing Randall Terry, who has a lot of eccentric views on many things. But he said something to me that has stuck with me in such an aggressive way. It weighs on my conscience so heavily because he says, we went and gave citizens' rights to corporations that don't have a soul to damn or an ass to kick.
Wow.
And they're never going to go to jail for the things they do that harm others.
That's the key.
And here's the
They
thing.
can't go to prison
We
and
just
not-
saw this
Yeah.
in real
what are the
time.
consequences?
Boeing executives
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
killed 356 people and lied about it to the Congress. And they were being charged with a felony, and their executives were due to likely get jail time.
Yep.
And Trump, in his new election, just in his DOJ, just dismissed all of those charges without the input of those victims' families.
Wow.
But
This
also-
keeps happening.
Well, it does, and I will go back too to say with the Boeing thing. Boeing was investigated in Texas, and I think it was the Northern District of Texas. The U.S. attorney at the time left the U.S. attorney's office to go work for the law firm that represents Boeing,
Shocking.
Wow.
and that's the grift, right?
Wow.
Like that's the con.
That
That's how it
revolving
works,
door,
right? The
baby. We
revolving
love
door.
it.
It's like if you look back to the opioid epidemic and the Sacklers,
Yep.
like the employee at the FDA that approved the very bizarre pain label for Oxy that said it wasn't addictive,
Yeah.
left the FDA and went to go work for the
Yep.
Sacklers,
Sacklers.
right? Like it's just
It's people. It's members of the House.
It's just dumb.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
members
It's
of the
so
House.
fucking dumb.
I mean, it's actually pretty elegant in the simplicity of the grift.
Yeah.
Like, it really
Yeah.
is.
It's just
The problem is that we are, I don't want to say so dumb. What we are at this moment, we might have been dumb when we allowed it to start dividing
we
us.
trusted them.
At this point, we are so tired, so
Yeah.
overworked, so overextended, so undersupported.
and
We are so
undereducated.
hopelessly
Undereducated, that part.
uncommunity oriented right now. We are so individually separated. We are so isolated. We are so tired. Everyone is working 2 jobs with 3 side hustles. They're trying to put food on the table.
Yeah.
They're worried about their kids. They're worried about medicine. They're worried about so many things. Where the F are they going to find 30 minutes to go and then suddenly care about finding the bridge between 2 news sources? It's so hard
Well,
Yeah.
and it's intentional.
And
Yeah.
that's why the fourth estate in journalism really mattered. It's why our rules really
Yeah.
matter too, because like we're the people that could expose this because the corporate media is not going to now because they're paid by the pharmaceutical
Yep.
companies, right? And it's just like, but it's it's just like, I would also go back to like, we trusted our government, right? Like we trusted the people that we elected to do good by us. And what I still can't,
But we keep voting for them and they don't.
I know.
Yeah,
And also what I
exactly.
can't wrap my head around
It's
is it's
repetition.
not just the politicians, it's the bureaucrats, right? Like I talked about this
So
U.S. attorney in Texas, like who is she that she could do that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
what
a
is in
family.
her soul? And
I
like
am
that's
telling
what I
you,
don't get.
the calculus is simple. It's a
Money?
simple
Money.
calculus. The power is so addictive. The same way that we chase dopamine, that money is theirs.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm sorry to say that it's going to take hard conversations,
Yeah.
big compromises, and probably some really, really terrible things before people are ready. But when they are, I don't think it's going to take that much. I think that enough of us could get together to get people to 5 or 6 races to just we don't have to tell them who to vote for.
Yeah.
All we have to do is tell them not to vote for an incumbent.
Yeah.
In a primary, we need to choose anyone but the incumbent. On both sides, we choose 3 Republicans and 3 Democrat incumbents, and we flip them. That minute, it will start to change. And then we use that to do it again.
But we have like the mechanisms, and I know I'm an optimist, so I'm glad I'm not the only one. But we have the mechanism. We have social media. We have a way to get this information out to people, like a convention of states. You have people show up and you say, listen, state legislator, you don't vote on this, you're out. Like we have the power to do this. There is a convention of states currently in process for term limits. If you all aren't aware, you should
I love
be.
that. Yeah.
Go look it up. They've actually made some progress. But we could be doing this. Yeah. We just aren't. We're not using the tools at our fingertips. We have the mechanisms in the Constitution handed to us as the people to take this back. We're not doing it.
How many people in America do you believe really have, 1, the education and knowledge to assist without people like us, 2, just the time?
That's why we're here, though.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're out driving Uber between their 2 part-time jobs to pay for a $1,900 a month 1-bedroom apartment for their 3 kids.
I get it. But even just like a repost, an engagement, like there absolutely could be enough of a rumble. I believe, again, maybe it's the optimist in me, that there could be enough of a rumble on social media that you bring enough attention that the pressure is there to bring change. We've seen pressure, public pressure applied, and it does change.
I agree.
Look at, like, the
I think
Violet
we're on that
Revolution.
path, but it's going to take a bigger group of people that are willing to have this conversation.
Yeah.
No one on this couch agrees on everything.
True.
Most of us probably
Obviously.
disagree on a lot of big things. Most of us probably disagree on a lot of big things.
Yeah.
But we're all very committed to the conversations to remind people that we're allowed to disagree and still come together. I want to say that I think the most important thing that people need to know is that for the average American, the most liberal person on your block and the most conservative person, those are not real words, they're just made up, but the most supposedly liberal person on your, let's say this, the person with the BLM and pride flag at one end of your street and the person with the Confederate flag at the other end of your street, people would think, oh, I don't agree with them on anything. Wrong.
Yeah.
Statistically, you agree with them on between 81 and 93% of all issues. 81 to 93%. It is only the very far left and right 3.5% of issues that largely impact 0.5% of the population. That doesn't mean they don't matter. That they use to convince you to hate your neighbors. And if we could see past the 3% of things we disagree on to focus on the 93% of things that we agree on, we could change everything. We just have to start talking to each other and stop hating each other.
Well,
That's it.
can I have a question for everybody here, because I think you used this word many times, which is an American, and I'm not really sure what that means at this point, because it used to mean.
Well, it means if you love football.
Well, so right. Well, could that be a unifying thing? Because what I'm saying is, because it used to be like, I think for better or for worse, it used to be like if you're an American, you're white, you're Christian, and now we've decided, okay, we want to include more people, and now we have this kind of disconnect. We don't really know what that means. What does it mean to be an American? Because now we have all kinds of things going on. Because one of the most enlightening things that has happened to me in the last few months is I was actually in China by circumstance when Donald Trump was doing his first like tariff stuff, and I was talking to one of the executive, the CEO of one of their, like, she makes like minerals or manufacturing supplies, and a lot of business with the United States. So I was like, what are you going to do? Like, this is a huge impact on your business. Are you going to lay people off? What are you going to do here? She said, no, we're Chinese. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to keep everybody that I have and we're going to get through this together. And I don't know a single American company that would say, yes, we're all an American. I'm going to do everything I can to keep everybody here
Whoa,
made
tag
whole.
me in.
You got to
Nope.
drive.
So
east
So I want to hear from
to the
everybody.
middle
Like, what
a
does
little
it
bit.
mean to be? How do we unify? How do we find this common thread? What does it mean to be an American? Is it just money? Because it seems like that's the only thing we care about. We're going to sell out anything for money. Is there anything beyond money that that ties us together?
Before you do this, and I'm so sorry, but I'm still on East Coast time and I'm about to fall asleep. I'm dying and I have to go to bed. And I love you guys.
Okay.
And continue on.
Love
We love you.
Sleep well.
We love you, Amy.
Buenas noches, bonita. Te amo.
Talk about whatever you want now.
Do you need to shut this? Do you want to use this?
No, we're good.
That's the camera.
I will use that.
Full frontal
Yeah.
Amy, everybody. Full frontal Amy.
Jesus, OnlyFans.
I will be.
That's
Yeah,
I-
little OnlyFans content.
I'll probably
that
dip.
kind of platform. That's still the camera.
I'll probably dip after this conference.
Yeah, OnlyFans. User.
Good night.
We
All
love
right,
you.
we love you.
But I am curious in terms of like, what is that? So what does it mean to you guys to be an American, and what values can actually tie us together to get us to this point where we can unite?
So, first of all, I think that that's a really uniquely of the moment question, because if you look back in the United States, there were a large series of studies after 9/11 in the 12 years that followed, 12 or 13 years that followed, that were trying to define what it meant to be an American that actually united us as a country. And it was determined that in America, our patriotism was the closest thing we had to a national religion, and that Americans, by and large, fully were committed. They didn't agree on many things, but that we agreed that we still lived in the greatest country in the world, and that our patriotism was the closest thing we had to a national religion. It's something that was very big after 9/11.
Yeah.
And then what happened in 2010? Citizens United. And this is the first time in American history that 70% of young people say they're not proud to be an American, or they don't believe in the American dream. So this is a uniquely of the moment question, but not one we had to ask just 15 years ago.
And I think that answer in itself, even the people that say, I'm not proud, what America is it desires better, quicker, faster. We expect more out of ourselves constantly.
Yeah.
We expect an upgrade. We actually desire a better humanity. Both right and the left desire better lives for the people and their family around them.
Right.
And we are willing to fight effortlessly, even against our own neighbor, because of our own intuition, history, values. As
So
we know,
will you sacrifice your neighbor so you can improve the conditions of your family?
everything. That is what being American is. Willing
Wouldn't
to
that be kind of an
sacrifice
issue
everything
though?
for
I
it.
have to say something, because right now we're here in this podcast, but we're also live streaming it on my channel.
Yeah.
And I'm
God.
watching what's happening. Now, my channel, generally, everybody's very respectful of one another. They might disagree. There's some pretty disrespectful stuff going on over this conversation right now that I don't usually see.
Oh God.
And
Wait, how
I'm-
do you say it's in it over there?
Oh, she's
in
on her
my
phone.
alt
Oh
account
God,
right
I'm
here.
scared now.
So, Jules and Dog and Daniel, guys, I'm watching right now that rather than having the conversations to learn from one another, which is what I expect and what we're trying to do here, what I'm watching in real time is really good microcosm case study. Instead, they're telling each other why they're wrong. They're not actually seeking to learn. And so what's happening is I just said, for the first time in American history, young people are either not proud to be an American or don't believe in the American dream is there for them anymore. They don't believe. And this is also the first time that parents don't believe that they're leaving a better world for their kids. They don't believe their children are going to do better than them. That is, and they're saying it's
It's a
because
huge fear of mine as a parent.
it's
right
a
now.
terrifying fear of mine.
Yeah.
What's happening in the comments is we have a few people on one side or the other that are saying that's because colleges are indoctrinating the kids. That's not the answer, by the way. The answer is that we have allowed, through our fighting with one another, through our division with one another, to be so divided that we don't create accountability for our politicians so that they can continue to serve the interests of billionaires that have siphoned money away from the middle class and the working class of America, so that the possibilities that were afforded to my generation are no longer attainable for most of the next generation, including my children. I can believe in American excellence, and I fight for small businesses. That's my business, right? That's what I do. I can believe in American excellence and opportunity, and also recognize that you have to make $350,000 a year to buy a house in most major metropolitan areas and know that that will never be attainable for our children, because to get those jobs, they would have to go to college. And that means the debt that comes with it, because we've been so busy not holding our politicians accountable that we have allowed money to pour in to cause college expenses to go up and up and up and up and up, because there are lobby groups dedicated to that endeavor, and we're not doing anything about it. We can look at this and say that they are less likely to have the opportunity to ever move between economic classes. 1 or 2% of them might get that opportunity, but most will not unless we do something very serious. It's not because they're being indoctrinated. It's because everybody there is feeling the same way, and it's creating an echo chamber that does reinforce that, but so does the world. Okay? They can't afford to live. 33-year-olds have 3 roommates or are still living with their parents because they can't afford to get a house, and because we promised them that if they took out $70,000 in loans for a college degree, that they'd be able to pay it back with the jobs that are no longer there.
Yeah.
That's the reality. I don't have to like it. I don't have to be partisan to know that that's true. I have children. I have a 23-year-old and I have a 12-year-old.
It is cyclical, though.
It is.
Like, that's the
It
thing.
is.
There are, like, for example, like my neighbor was like, we're selling our house on the block for the most expensive price it's ever sold on that block.
Sure.
I'm like, that sounds cool, and I think you should if you can.
Yeah.
I also, that's a symbol. Like, I'm like, oh, that means that's probably the last house that's going to get sold on the block for a second.
Yeah.
No.
You know,
No, because then
No.
it'll just keep going higher.
it doesn't keep on going.
It does keep going higher, and there's a
does.
reason
Not
it
if
keeps going higher.
not within the context of all history ever.
That could be true if we were still in a free market economy. But right now, we've allowed our economy to be bastardized by corporate interests. 35 to 44% of the houses in most major metropolitan areas are getting bought up by investment firms. And those investment firms are not going to take a loss. If they can't sell those houses for more, they're going to move them to the secondaries market, and they're going to swap them with one another for an increased price just to artificially inflate it for enough comps to keep the prices going up, unattainable for us and attainable for them.
But you're seeing
This is
but,
happening.
but the what they're betting on this fact that we are gonna, like, by tooth or nail all the blood that possible, continue to pay $4,000 for a shit apartment. And what's happening is you're starting to see it in younger individuals within the economy. They're getting to an exhaustion rate where it's cheaper to not have a job.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I'm just gonna be. And so that's not.
That
it's
sounds
just-
like my manifesto. Honestly.
Luke's over here like
but
just.
But I've
Just let
experienced a
me
lot
be.
of friends in
Right.
Los Angeles where I'm like, they're like, I'm too broke to leave the house this week.
Yep.
That's happening a lot.
Well, can I add something to the private equity thing? You're saying, hey, 40% or 45%, they're buying all the homes.
Please.
But the thing is, there's people who work at these private equity firms. It's
Yep.
not just some mysterious
not.
entity. It's people making these decisions. So it's like, is there something higher than just making money to say, hey, I don't want to do this because this is bad for the nation? Is that possible? Because people are ultimately making these decisions. It's
Yeah.
not just an amorphous group. It's like individuals saying, hey, it's worth it for me to do this. But there's other places that I've seen in the world that say, hey, we're not going to do this because this is bad for all of us.
Well, I think there's a cultural thing to that, right? Like Asia has like high shame levels, right, around certain crimes,
Yeah,
or like
they
you
do.
don't want to bring shame upon your family. I
Right.
don't think I don't think that type of culture is prevalent in the United States.
mean,
And I
we're
also
a
think
shame economy.
yeah, exactly.
We know shame here.
we
do
will
it
shame you
different.
hard on
Yeah.
social media, but I also think we have systemic lack of accountability.
Yeah.
I mean, let's
that
be
part.
honest.
It's more than that.
Well, and also,
I agree with you, but I think just from like the like,
But I'm
should I
asking
do
a
the good
question.
thing? Like, yeah.
I'm asking, is there, can there be something higher that unifies us to deter people or to incentivize people not to do those things and do something else, right? Because in Asia, right, you get rewarded for doing things honorably and this and that.
Mhm.
And here, there is no honor in, like for us, like we don't make as much money, and it's like we're just doing it because that's in our heart to do. But there's not that many people who would do that.
But then
How
you
do
see people who
incentivize?
aren't doing it with good intentions getting
Millions of
elevated in the
dollars.
United
Exactly.
States. Yeah.
Exactly.
For propaganda. Well, also too, from like what I've noticed too, from like for Gen Zers is, no one is, like you were saying, no one's hiring without a college education anymore. So a lot of these, people in Gen Z and even like, everyone else, people are feeling defeated. And what I've also learned, what I've seen from my own perception is that now that the social media is becoming this, next job market for so many people, everyone thinks they can make it. and they can't. Because one thing that people need is authenticity.
That might be 3%
Well,
of 100%
I don't know.
of the
I know
population.
so.
That's not 100%.
Well, yeah,
of
but
Gen
no,
Z.
for Gen Z, from the people that I talk to,
No.
they can't get jobs though. Like I've talked to so many different
Tim
people.
Dillon did say we are in a
No,
podcast-based
people-
economy.
Yes, people can't get jobs.
No, but you can't get jobs to pay for a lifestyle
Yes.
that we all expect.
Exactly.
So
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
there is an impossibility
It
within a
is
lot
an
of people.
impossibility.
Yeah.
No,
and
I'm just saying that within
But
my
it's also,
generation,
too,
I'm
like,
seeing it
a lot
like
of these
throughout
people
right
in
now,
Gen Z
especially
though,
in
they
LA.
weren't raised right too. Like the school systems are not teaching children how to become successful as
And why is
adults.
that?
Because our school system sucks.
No, it's because the cost of all of everything in education has become privatized.
Right.
Simon and Schuster, the largest publisher of scholastic books, is owned by a private equity firm.
Oh,
They
wow.
don't want an educated population. These corporations
can
control our
manipulate, yeah.
education. They control our prison systems. They would much rather they make money sending these kids to prison than to jobs. They don't want thinkers. They want workers. They want prisoners. They
Yeah.
want renters.
But they have to be well-fed, optimistic, and like patriotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the founders of this country well know that like when you give people these values, these rights, and this ability for a livelihood, you actually create this population base that creates this economy. That's the strongest economy that's ever existed on planet Earth, ever, right? So these companies are discounting what people are experiencing and the desire for growth forward. That's why these bubbles pop. It constantly happens. The reason that we're having riots on the streets right now, like in Los Angeles, or this discourse just internationally, is really a big sign of like economic times of everyone feeling so darn pinched. They're like, what is it? It's like, it's just the guy that came over the border. When if we weren't so pinched, like we've been historically for a long time, we didn't point it out. We just are like, well, shit, I'm not going to get in the way of what's happening because my life's okay. But no one's life is what was expected right now. And that's why it's getting dicey. And
right now,
breaks.
our buying power is lower. Our average household buying power is lower than it was during the Great Depression in the United States. When you compare dollar for dollar, the buying power the average family in the United States had during the Great Depression versus what we have dollar for dollar spending power for just basic necessities, we are lower right now than it was during the Great Depression, which is shocking to me. And when I saw the math, it was really, really horrifying. Yeah. But the reality is that the ethics of it, right? The ethics are that in America, excellence is what we seek. And if the law allows it, it must be okay. So if there's a loophole, then I'm not really doing anything bad. The problem is that we are in a circumstance where, and I say this a lot, because I actually believe in free market capitalism as being the best economic engine on the planet. However, we're not living in a free market capitalist society right now. We're not. We're living in a monopolized, consolidated society where our regulators have failed to break up those monopolies. And as a result, small businesses are squeezed by Google and Meta and can't afford advertising. So they are all failing. Private equity is consolidating small businesses to create massive monopolies and regional monopolies so that families can't afford to do basic things like get new roofing or like fix an HVAC unit or get their plumbing fixed because they've bought all of the small businesses. They haven't told anybody. And then they've unified software and hiked the prices through antitrust behavior. Right?
But there is elements where, like, for example, this optimist.
Just let me get there. Let me land this plane. Capitalism is I'm going to keep saying this till everyone can say it. Capitalism is a very perfect mathematical equation. Okay? For it to succeed, it is going to do whatever is necessary for the most infinite output of productivity and wealth for the least amount of economic expense and labor. That is what it is built for. That it is a perfect mathematical equation, which means that at all times, whether anyone likes this or not, capitalism in its purest form is trying at all times to get as close to slavery as possible. It is our job, humans and regulators, to stop the greed-based machinations of those that would misuse capitalism to hurt the working class and the small businesses. It is our regulators' job to make sure the wheels don't come off through free market economics, trust busting, and anti-collusion. And our regulators are so busy taking money from the monopolists that we have utterly and totally failed the society that is set or supposed to benefit from the economic engine that capitalism could be for them. Right now, over the last 15 years, since Citizens United, we have busted fewer monopolies, and we have literally 17 times as many monopolies than as the worst point in human history.
Yeah.
Period.
Now, the reason these companies that need us to eat and need us to try, the reason they're in a dangerous spot, though, is we all are starting to get innovative.
Yep.
We're starting to get used to being broke.
Yep.
We are resetting our expectations. They don't want us to reset our expectations.
No.
They need us to bleed for the $4,000 apartment down the street from my house.
Yeah.
So when that starts to happen and we readjust a little bit, that's I think they do a lot to like kind of distract us and confuse us and get us to fight over things again. But historically, those systems do kind of come around. And we're in a very, very unique time, even just having this conversation on this couch right now, that like, wow, we're like, everyone's getting manipulated and we see it right in front of our eyes. We have a bunch of people being like, can I put my hand up? Because this seems crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And we're doing a really good job of confronting things very quickly and swiftly at the moment.
So historically, these systems are cyclical and they do come around. The problem is that historically, when we see this level of consolidation, the middle class and the working class always begin to fail or collapse. And usually the regulators step in and go through broad periods of antitrust busting and regulation to bring balance back to the economy. When they have not been willing to do that, historically in every economy, it took violence or revolution. And I don't want that. And so we have to get to a point where we can talk to each other and work together, because the alternative, you talked about a pendulum earlier, right?
Yep.
We were talking about a pendulum. Historically, in world history, politics swings like this. Mm-hmm. It goes back and forth, and then it might slow in the middle, and then it goes back and forth. Historically, when it starts to swing big to one side and then big to another, you only get 5 to 6 swings before it flips over and it resets.
I get that.
Right now, we're on the 5th big swing in this country. And no regulators, well, Lena Khan was doing the Lord's work, but we know how that went. So right now, we have no politicians, very few, not no, that are willing to put the needs of the population of America ahead of the demands of the billionaires that are funding them. And unless they do, the reset will not come the way we want it to. It will stabilize cyclically, but it's not going to be pretty. And the guillotines won't head to DC. They're going to head to Wall Street. I'm serious. So historically, that is the only way it has ever happened in world history.
Yeah, we kind of seen a little bit of that happen last year and a half, right? Where,
I mean, I'm just saying, like, there are things that normally in American history we would all get together to mourn or to weep for or to empathize with. And I am telling you that in the comment sections on the podcasts where I've been and online, I have never seen two parties united like they were over Submarine Gate and their thoughts and prayers. Okay? And then we watch what happened with Mario's brother. And I'm telling you, that was a unifying moment that terrified me.
Yeah.
Because empathy, like, I'm sorry. There were some on either side that were like, this is terrible. And the others were like, he killed 3 of my family members. Mm-hmm. He might have done it through his paperwork, but he did. Or you can look at Carlyle Group, right? Carlyle Group is one of the biggest private equity firms on the planet. They bankrupted hundreds of nursing homes, in the process killing 23,000 senior citizens. And they left thousands of them homeless after they'd given their life savings to live there.
Yeah.
Those are the people that the guillotines are going to go for. That's where it's going to go. Unless we start talking to each other and demanding more.
Now, I guess I don't want to change this discourse yet, but I do have a question after that. I do believe there could be potentially a crafted, unifying event that could be desired within the context of creating patriotism again. Right?
You're talking about a false flag event.
I was just saying.
Is that what you're
saying? Like that's like I do think, like, sadly America is primed for that.
If that happened, it would only be to distract us from actually fixing this.
Yeah, but it wouldn't work because there's too many people like myself who are going to call that out.
At this point, we can't be.
Work.
here's the problem.
I don't know.
The-
It's weird how quickly my friends slide.
I-
I don't know if we have enough in the purple tank or whatever this we're gonna call
Right.
it to hold that line. I have.
I think it has
optimism
to
that
come
we
back.
could, but like it's
The
man,
closer
it
we
flips
get to
quick.
it, the
Everyone
more, like,
injects into like this matrix system. And
You probably, and I know Luke is going to agree with me on this. The closer we get to the point where we might be able to create that accountability, the more dangerous it's going to become for all of us. Not just us. I mean, America.
Sorry, what
Because-
do you mean by that? That kind of went over.
I'm
me.
just going to say that any time historically that any type of class awareness or realization that we have more in common than we have apart has started to manifest, not just here, but like Roman Empire, anywhere. The government or a government finds a way to make sure that something terrible happens to distract us from that change. And I'm going to say right now, war can be the reason, terrorism can be the reason, martial law can be the reason. There are lots of ways historically that this has been done. But right now, corporations are controlling everything in our country and every politician in our country, every single one. And those corporations, I don't know if you guys have noticed, no stocks have lost share value. No American has any money. They only have debt, and no stocks have lost any value. None. Okay? They will find a way to keep making wealth for themselves. And if we start to wake up, that ends, and those stock prices will fall. But it's going to take something very fundamental changing in the way Americans are interacting with one another. And unfortunately, when we're not being effectively divided, they will find a way to divide us. And it's going to take us preparing for that and being ready to continue to have these conversations regardless of what that looks like. I don't like to get deep state, like, conspiratorial.
You love that. What are you talking
No,
about?
I like that Ian likes that. I like that
I don't want to
Ian
go deep, but hold on.
No, I'm serious. But
I like it though. It's good.
Historically, you can look at what happens in our country anytime there's about to be an awakening. You can look at JFK or RFK.
Yeah.
You can look at the Iran-Contra affair. You can look at Operation Enduring Freedom. You can look at the loss of the Twin Towers. And anytime America is reaching a point where we're starting to care more about one another and come together in a way, we're either going to become unified behind whatever the government's asking us to do through something that happens, or we're going to become unified in hating one another. It happens over and over again. But we also have more access to information and knowledge than at any point in human history. And I believe we're capable of being better this time.
Have you read Nexus by Harari?
I haven't, but
He basically makes the argument that we think that information is going to free us, but information is actually enslaving us. It's a great argument. It's a much more complex book than that. But the idea is we think, oh, well, we have access to this, but who is really facilitating and curtailing that access? Or who's like, if Google is deciding what that actually looks like, that information we have access to, or if ChatGPT or if Grok or if whatever, well, is it really information? And is that information actually of value? And
is it
It's
better
the
for
waves
me
that
to
we
say,
keep
like,
on getting like just
is it
drowned
better
by.
for me to say that it's not the research information I'm talking about, the visual access to what's really happening in the world? We're seeing women sit in their cars sob because they can't feed their kids, working 3 jobs. We're watching that. We're watching veterans cry out for help because they don't have resources and they're thinking about taking their lives. In real time, we're watching children die overseas of malnourishment when there's 9,000 aid trucks at a border. However you feel about that, we're watching that in real time. So I'm not really saying where we search for information. I'm saying that we're seeing it in real time.
It is overwhelming.
Without this, it's so much information coming so fast, but it's getting a lot harder to manipulate. However, AI is going to make it easier to manipulate, and it's also going to take 96 million jobs.
I would have been on your side
that's
until
the
this
problem.
war,
I think I need
but
to hear
What-
about
no,
that.
so what I was going to
I'm
say
like,
is,
whoa, we can still get manipulated real quick.
I agree with why you're calling that information, but I would say that is actually just kind of like an emission of humanity. That is what is of value. I think the information just becomes a sea that we drown in. I think that actual connection to human beings, to the human experience, to emotion, to struggles, to experiences, that is what is going to save us. And so I agree with you. So being able to see that visual or have that emotional experience, that is the thing that will like move us in a positive direction. I think that the information itself is actually the noise more than the signal, and that's where we lose it. Because if it becomes about the information, it becomes about the data rather than the human experience, we get lost in that. Whereas if it actually is focused on what is the human experience, like you said, that person crying in their car, that child losing their life, that person suffering, that is where we're actually get the perspective that we need.
Yeah.
This is kind of an aside, but you were asking about, is there like an America here? The closest that
That's not an aside. That's a fundamental question
Well,
to address.
I mean, it still exists. We do this thing where we like generalize and we're like, oh, it doesn't exist or it does exist.
Can you just scoot in for my live stream?
But there's different like companies out there. There's different people out there. And like the Arizona Tea Company guy, right?
Yeah,
Like, he
him.
owns the company. Never
We
raises
love
the price.
him.
We love him.
Like that's a great example of he doesn't have to answer to shareholders. He doesn't have to answer to
This is my
loans.
favorite
But that's an
part.
anomaly, though.
Right, it is an anomaly, but that's also a model. So if
That's
you're-
what we are too. We don't
Right.
have to
And
answer.
and in order to incentivize that model, we all
Right.
just need to support it.
So
We need
you can reset within an economy without having to reset the economy. You can have your own new economy within an economy.
Yes.
One of the things that you used to do when I try to explain to people on my channel, because I talk about economics a lot, and I want people to understand, they always think that, oh, capitalism is bad, economics is bad, all these things are money's bad. And it's like, oh, you just don't understand. Wealth is just an accumulation of what you need in the future, right? So like if you build yourself a shelter and you can live in that shelter, and let's say that shelter, it's a teepee, right? It's a tent, and it only will last you for like 2 or 3 months before it, becomes dilapidated and you need to rebuild it. That's wealth. You just created wealth. You took 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of your day and you built a structure that is going to provide for you, not just for today, but into the future. And that's what wealth is. Wealth is achieving your needs into the future. If you store food, right? Like you have a little cache of nuts and berries that you gathered and it lasts you through the winter. That's wealth. That means that your needs aren't just met today. It means you took time to accumulate something that is going to serve you into the future. That's all wealth is. Now, if you turn that into money, right, dollars that you spend for those items into the future, that's wealth. If you're borrowing, if you're constantly in a state of borrowing where you're reliant on other people's wealth, right, their capital, then you're never free. You're a slave. You're always paying. You're a debtor, right? So what the Arizona Tea Company is it's at a little island of wealth in a nation of debt. And like my big thing on my channel that I'm always talking about is, hello, we're spending $1 trillion a year in interest payments, $1 trillion a year. And this doesn't mean anything to anybody. But what people don't understand is whatever the government spends, you pay for. It doesn't matter whether it comes out of your paycheck or not. We're like, oh, I don't really pay that much in taxes. You pay for it. Your milk, your egg, your cheese, your housing, your movies you went to see, the concert you went to, all of that should be getting cheaper. We should be amassing wealth. What they've done is they've tricked you in this country into thinking that, no, things should always get more expensive. And they should get more expensive at a rate of 3%, which is what we see the economy expanding at. When they talk about the economy expanding, we're talking about that wealth. We're talking about that house, those nuts, those berries. That's what we're talking about expanding. We are building infrastructure. We are building wealth as a society every day. The 300 million human beings that live on this land in America, Americans, are building wealth at a rate of about 3% a year, right? Which is the growth of our economy. And what do? They quantitatively ease that. What does that mean, quantitative easing? It means that the growth that we experience, the wealth that we have amassed, all the nuts and berries that we've piled up together as human beings to carry out into the future, to meet our needs into the future, has grown at 3%. And we're now going to scrape that off through quantitative easing so that we can pin our inflation at 3% so that everything gets 3% more expensive. And where do we take that money from? Where do we take that growth from? We give it to the banks to lend out so that we can continue to grow the economy. That's where UBI is going to have to come in, right? If nobody can feed their kids and nobody has jobs because AI comes in, you're going to have to give people money. You're going to have a universal basic income. That's what Elon has already said. He's like, we're going to have UBI. What are all these people going to do? How will they participate in the economy? But instead of giving that growth of the economy back to the Americans in the form of UBI, we give it to the banks to lend out and earn interest on. And it's insane. Our economy is insane. So the solution, in my opinion, is you can't necessarily change the system. You're not going to convince the Federal Reserve to break down. You're not going to change the structure that's in place. It's just like a lot of times people will say, I expected Trump to not raise the debt ceiling. I was shocked that the person I elected who was going to battle this huge problem we had of spending too much money and going into debt forever was like, yeah, we're going to raise it to $5 trillion. We're going to raise the debt ceiling. I was like, oh, okay, of course. Duh, why didn't I think of this? There's no chance in hell that $1 trillion of interest payments, when we say we're paying $1 trillion in interest, who's that interest going to?
Yeah.
Everybody who's bought those securities. Or what are we going to do? Collect all those securities back and be like, yeah, we're not paying interest out to those people anymore. They want $1 trillion a year. That's what they're in on this for. Yep. So you're not really going to dissolve the system. You sure as hell are not going to dissolve the system by electing somebody who's going to change the system, because he's just going to primary anybody who's against it. Yeah. You have to, I believe, you have to work within the system. So what this means, you start over. You don't build businesses with debt anymore.
I'm a big fan
Private
of this.
equity.
So I talk, so now private equity is a dangerous word, right? I use it a lot. But if you borrow money from your mom to start a business, that's private equity.
Yeah.
If you kickstart and you raise money through your followers, that is also private equity. Right. The problem I have is pirate equity. That is literally strip mining everything we've built in American excellence and literally just strip mining everything out of it and leaving it saddled with debt, bound for bankruptcy, and decimated communities in its wake.
Yeah.
But we also have this problem of severe consolidation and monopolization. And right now that is hindering the ability for small businesses to thrive through a number of mechanisms. First of all, these consolidated corporations are lobbying the government for more regulation on small businesses for no regulation on themselves. That should be flipped.
Right.
If you're monopoly in this country, there should be 1 million regulations on you, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't exist.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they're supposed to be broken up.
That's the first thing.
But they're lobbying for extreme regulation on small businesses that want to enter the marketplace in a multitude of ways to cut that off. Secondly, we just saw our new president do something I fiercely disagree with, which was removing Lena Khan, Alvaro Bedoya, and Rebecca Slaughter from the FTC. Now they are suing for their jobs back, and they will likely win because you're not supposed to be able to fire any of the 5 offices that are supposed to be nonpartisan. But he did. He fired the liberal appointees there that were doing his work. It doesn't even make sense. But what they were doing was they were finding a new use for something called the Robinson-Patman Act. Now, one of the biggest problems we have in trust busting right now in this economy is that our antitrust laws were written for a time before digital anything. And they were written very specifically only to account for direct price fixing to consumers, collusion to consumers. They never conceived of a world where the monopoly would be that Google and Meta would work together to ensure that small businesses couldn't afford to advertise on the only platforms where advertising exists now, really, effectively. They never conceived of a world where the yellow pages wouldn't exist anymore, and that the new town square would literally not allow small businesses to access their potential customers without paying a premium that they could never afford. Okay? So they never conceived of a world where there would be so much consolidation that quite literally 3 companies would own everything.
Right.
Okay? So there's all of these machinations that are working together to make it very, very difficult for small businesses to rise and thrive. And then you have things like arbitration that are stopping people from learning about bad conduct. There's so many pressures.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it can't work, but they were finding new uses for the Robinson-Patman Act. This was an old law that they thought could be used in a modern time. I'm hoping we can still do so. It's a law that's made to stop big consolidated corporations from cutting deals that squeeze out small businesses from parts of the economy. For instance, if there's a lot of consolidation in the area of party supplies, right? And there are big players in the party supply game that are getting really sweetheart deals from whatever companies they're buying from. It stops them from being allowed to say, we want this deal, but written into this deal, we want it that nobody with a smaller company can ever get this deal. They have to pay X more than us. Because that way they make sure that no competition rises. And that is happening in every sector of our economy right now. And that is illegal. But we're not doing anything about it at all. Nothing. And it could be done. You could stop that. So small businesses, you've seen me. I have 1 hashtag in small business we trust. That's not true. I have 2. Fight private equity. I have 2. But in small business we trust. I tell everybody on every show I go into, you want to make a difference in this economy? You want to help your economy? The shoes you stand in, the most power you have or will ever have in this moment is to give up and forfeit convenience and savings to support the people that will actually give back to your community. Yeah. It used to be that these companies, these HVAC companies, these franchises, these roofing companies, these sign makers, they were the ones sponsoring baseball teams. They were the ones buying local billboards. They were the ones that were going and giving back to galas for charities in your neighborhood. They were the ones that put the jar on their counter for the kid down the street that has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they're raising money for treatment. That was those companies. Yeah. And they have been consolidated, and you don't even know it. I live in the middle of nowhere in a mountain town with tons of animals, tons of agriculture. I recently had to drive an hour and 15 minutes to the closest vet that had not been acquired by private equity. Wow. There are 57 vets in my community. 57. And I had to drive an hour and 15 minutes away to take my dog to the vet. That's horrible. Mm-hmm. You want to know the difference in the cost of treatment between the average I was quoted in my community and that vet? The average price, my dog needed his leg amputated at the hip. He had cancer in his leg. And I was quoted an average between $5,700 and $6,700 from everyone in my community. Wow. You want to know what I paid at that other vet? $1,100 total. You have to understand that that is a microcosm of what we're looking at on a nationwide scale in every industry. When a company like Champions Group or a company like JP Morgan is buying up all the HVAC companies, they're buying the name, image, likeness of those small business owners that were there before them. Okay? And when they do so, they're keeping that guy's face on that website. You think you have small businesses in your community. There is no law that makes anyone tell you that you've changed ownership. And so unfortunately, you don't realize that 57 veterinary clinics could have been bought by the same company. They weren't. There's 3 groups that have bought them all. It's pretty close, right? And they might be colluding to squeeze the supply chain for the little guys that have held out and refused to sell to them, right? Through collusion. Simultaneously, they might have installed unified software across all of these small businesses they acquired so that no matter who you call out to give you a quote, their prices are suddenly double or triple, right? And if our communities, if our elected officials, if we are not willing to demand accountability and change in that area, then we can still force a small business through, maybe, if we're very, very vocal. But we can't help every small business because it's not possible to enter the market the way it used to be. And that we have to correct because most people don't know this statistic. But in America, over the last 25 years, 99.9% of all jobs created, all of them, were created by small businesses. Major corporations eliminate jobs and create efficiencies. All they do is fire people and create more productivity. 99.9% were created by small businesses. And we are on the precipice right now of losing job growth because there won't be small businesses.
But we're living in a community that's like ready to be re-inspired, right?
I agree with you.
So like we're sitting in because as like it does make sense of like all the statistics that you're telling us about, like all the big companies own everything. Yeah. And you can kind of feel that culturally. Yeah. Like it's kind of exhausting, it's tiring, it's not inspiring.
Millennial gray now.
And so
no originality.
You know
I'm right.
And unfortunately, like COVID was an interesting kind of marker that washed a lot of like the cool stuff away for a second. Because like I lived in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and then I was like Arts District LA, like kind of during this little like bridge period. And I'm like, man, like I can't go back to any of those areas and tell my wife about the cool stuff that was happening.
It's all gone.
Yeah, you know, it got just swept.
Yep.
That's because we closed 30 million businesses that were small and created 550 new billionaires that consolidated all of the wealth that was lost by small businesses to literally 550 billionaires during that time frame. 27 kids' businesses closed down in my little mountain town.
Can billionaires stay rich and new companies re-inspire the masses and just create a whole new version of wealth, though? Like, why do we have to steal all the billionaires' money that they've already acquired? That we're never going to be able to take anyway.
We can't steal
like
all
you're
the
saying.
No, we can't do that.
Yeah, because but like we just have to like re-inspire the masses that people like to be human, experience cool shit. They want new products. We love innovation. We trust each other sometimes. And like the more that we stop looking
sometimes.
up and start looking down and go, man, we got this.
So yes.
We're such pussies right now, honestly.
No, we're not. No, we're not. Like, first
Yeah,
of
we
all,
kind
we're
of
not
are.
because people
Like
right
this
here
is
are
like
proving
we're
that's
like
not
such
true.
cozy environments and everybody's always bitching.
Yeah.
That is true.
Like it's like we're
No, they're
good.
not. They're always hustling.
My grandpa would look at me and be like, dude, shut the fuck up. It's gonna be okay. We survived worse.
Did we though?
It reminds
getting
me
pretty
of, do you
bad
guys
right now.
remember Wall-E? Do you
It's
remember?
never been this bad
Yeah,
for the
it's-
younger generations ever in American history, ever. Never. Not even close.
Do you guys remember
My
the movie Wall-E?
child is living like a dope little existence.
But that's
That's
your
so
child.
nice for you, but
That's-
that's
Yeah,
not
that's
most
not
kids.
that's not the
That's
that's not the
your
realism
child.
for
No,
most of the
that's
young
so
people in
nice
this
for your
country,
kid.
though.
That's
That
your
is
child.
so nice for your kid. That
you
is not
understand
most
that
people.
most of the young people now are working 2 jobs at 23 years old and don't
My
even live their
child's a year
20s
and a
out.
half.
They don't even live their 20s out anymore
She
because they
doesn't
can't
even
afford
have
it.
core memory yet. I'm talking about like in her, like in the space that I have control of
Right.
with my wife. I'm able to create an existence for her young childhood. Now, I don't know, like I am not going to probably be able to create the life that my parents created for me, for my child. I don't think I'll be able to get to that level. I hope I can get to like 70% of it, but it's not looking great.
Do you recognize that's the first time in American history any generation has agreed that that is where we're going? It has never, ever happened in American history that most of a generation believed
Usually,
their kids
like,
would
if-
not do as
go
well
back
as
to
they
my
did.
example.
But I can learn-
Like, imagine if we were just humans on the
Can I
earth.
rebuttal that point? Because I think there has been a time.
Hold on, flying
I feel
in.
like during the draft.
No, literally Jimmy Carter's speech in 1979 said, "This is the first time in our generation." I know it because it's from the movie The Miracle or Miracle on Ice. Okay, that hockey movie against the Soviet Union. He literally made a speech that, "Hey, this is the first time in history that the next generation thinks it's going to be worse than the previous generation."
So twice it's happened.
Twice.
Jimmy Carter also started the devolution to allow private equity to acquire everything. Thank you, Jimmy.
So I almost made your point even more
I was say, like, imagine if
salient.
you were just
Yeah,
a
take
human
that.
on
Sold.
the earth.
Good job,
And it was
Jimmy.
just you and your
no,
wife.
Jimmy was actually a really great guy that loved people and loved and believed what he did.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I didn't agree with everything he did, but he really.
I don't know. I heard he was a
like-
stupid peanut farmer.
I
I've heard
watched
that
him
too.
build houses for
Propaganda.
Habitat for Humanity until the day he died.
No,
That
I
man
heard he was
actually
just
went
a
out and did
stupid
the work.
peanut farmer.
Yeah.
That was the story I was
was
I
told.
a
think
peanut
it's
butter,
really
wasn't
so.
he? Yeah.
I really want to touch on something you just said because you just asked, can't we just muscle these businesses through and make it better through our creativity and desire to do it? Now, here is the problem with that because, yes, to a certain degree, we can really achieve that. We could possibly, and I believe there are ways, but
And it might be our only chance.
no,
That's what I'm
wait,
kind of like.
Wait.
We're gonna thread the needle. There's
I'm
only
going
one
to
way
go
to
to
do
Gary
it.
Stevenson, who's an economist I deeply admire. Wealth is a finite resource. There is not never-ending money. Now, the government can print never-ending money, but it only prints more as our cost of living goes up. It doesn't print more that suddenly is available to us in the working class. It prints more that is available to the borrowers that already have the wealth. The more that wealth is consolidated, the less that the wealth is being spent in the economy. So here's the problem. You get wealth, I get wealth. We're probably going to upgrade a house. We might put in a pool. We might register for a nice local private school. We might go and build a business. But when you have almost $1 trillion in wealth, you can't spend enough to recirculate it into the economy. You have to buy bigger and bigger things to do anything with it. And the only thing you're buying then is other big companies. And all you're going to do to get more of it is create efficiency. And so when you reach a level of wealth consolidation where we are now, historically, of every dollar that the price increased on an item that was for sale in America, 93 cents of that dollar increase historically in inflation was recirculated into the economy. 6 cents was kept by the company. It went to new investment, new employees, improvements to the product lines. Maybe it went to hiring people to expand your factory, but it got recirculated in some way.
Understood.
Right now, an average of 3 cents is going back into the economy. When you go from 93 cents to 3 cents, there is less wealth available for us to muscle those things through. And there is more wealth available at the top that has to be spent. There is more dry powder, and they're going to keep consolidating until we make that stop. Now, am I suggesting we go round up all the billionaires and take all their money? No. I am absolutely suggesting that we need to put the guardrails back on through basic regulation to protect small businesses. I used to be a libertarian, staunchly.
Yeah.
Staunchly, I own that. And now that I understand the economics of what's happening to our small businesses, and now that I understand that arbitration is bankrupting the ones that won't sell. Because look at me. I wouldn't close my small business. I've been sued 5 times to the tune of $15 million because they want my tiny small business gone, right? If we don't sell, they take it. Or they collude with the ones that they did get to block you out of the supply chain.
So
which is what Robinson Batman
what happens to the billionaires if we just all die?
So that's an interesting question.
Because uninspired, but
They ask that
what
question
I mean,
themselves
really
often.
good
no, but
question. We ask
no,
it
but
so
because
often. No,
die
no.
means to
My
me
God.
like when we get so uninspired, we no longer want to fight for the next little thing.
They will find a
Because
war.
the biggest thing that I think is gonna
It'll be a war. It'll be a war.
Because what
Civil war.
there's one thing that I really learned from
Yeah.
my parents' experience. The bigger house doesn't create more happiness.
No.
You don't need a boat, you can rent it. And stop thinking that like these little frivolous things are the happiness.
You'll own nothing and be
Be
happy.
happy. There it is.
If I could own nothing and keep traveling,
Wait.
that would be maybe
I know,
pretty
but-
cool.
but
I
these
agree
are
with
coping
you that you don't
mechanisms.
need the big. First of all, foster household trailer park. Okay.
Yeah.
I was the only one in my family still to go to college to this day.
Mhm.
Okay. I have 26 foster siblings. Like 24 of them went to jail in the foster care to prison pipeline. I came from nothing.
Yeah.
I had food stamps, free lunch, and I slept in rooms where the windows were broken in the winter and I had no heat. I boiled water to take a bath in my lifetime. Okay. I absolutely agree that the bigger house doesn't create happiness. I can also tell you that there's no room for happiness when you are working 4 jobs and still can't provide a house of any kind. Okay. And I want to be very clear. The billionaires right now that are controlling our politicians have convinced them that the economy is okay because the stock market
But
is
if
okay.
we all get to that, they die.
Wait, you're right.
Because we'd kill
But
it.
but hear me, it doesn't matter, okay? Because right now
They
engaged-
would die.
No, it doesn't matter. You're missing the point. When
If I get to that, they die.
They
That's what they
die.
don't understand.
They don't die. They don't die. They move to another country and start
Well,
over
they'll have
again.
They
to
got
stop-
bunkers.
They
got
don't
bunkers.
die.
No, they got bunkers.
I
That's
need
true.
you to understand when we reach this level of consolidation at any other country in history, if the guardrails didn't get put back on, the country collapsed and the billionaires moved on.
Yeah.
That's what
Ray
happens.
Dalio.
We have to put the guardrails back on. We have to demand it soon. That's what happens. If we die, they find workers in the next country with their money can exploit.
Yeah.
And they will leave. And they will leave this country bankrupt. We have to put the guardrails back on. Now, I'm not saying we're close to that. I'm not saying that's tomorrow or in 3 weeks or even in 3 years. I am saying we are closer to that than at any point in American history.
At
Period.
some point,
I'm saying I'm more fearful for them than us.
no.
That's why they're hiring. No, absolutely not.
Billionaire apologists
They're
here.
building.
Yeah,
do you-
no.
No,
okay.
but I see what you're
I just trust the system.
Have
I
you
trust
guys
people.
heard?
Like,
Have you guys heard the Sun Valley? Has everybody heard what happened in Sun Valley when? Okay, so there was an economist and an AI theorist that was invited to speak at a conference in Billionaire Bunker, Sun Valley, Idaho, and he was recounting it on an Economist podcast like a month or two ago. I saw it, but I think it was from last year. And he said he thought he was going there to talk about economics, and when he got there, it was a room full of billionaires that were building bunkers, all of them.
wow.
And they were hiring robot dogs. And he got to the room and they said they had a problem that they believed only he could solve for them. And he thought it was going to be an economic question. The only question that this room full of billionaires wanted answered was, how do we build a system that is so secure and that I control that when society collapses, that my security that I hire to protect my wealth won't turn on me and take it from me?
Wow.
It was the only
Wow.
question they had. How do I control the people my money buys to protect me from the masses?
But
The
you can't.
only question they had. No, they
Well,
will
your
be able
point
to
is
with
you
robots
can't
If it gets
shortly.
that dicey, you can't.
They will with robots very shortly. Very shortly.
We
I mean,
burn the robots first. We saw
No.
it with Waymo.
We shoot
No.
them.
No, because
They're
have you
robots.
seen iRobot? They're very
It's what
powerful
we do.
robots.
It's the
Yeah,
new
but they-
Ryan
The
It
starts
starts
the
to roll
robot.
billionaires
them, though.
have the robots. But I'm very serious right
I think we
now.
shut him down.
I know.
right?
I
We shut 'em
understand
down,
that.
right, yeah, I'm
You're
pretty
You
sure we
think
shut
that
them
we're
down.
going to rise up and overtake the robots? That's
that's
a
a
very
movie.
idealistic movie prospect. I
And a
work with
happy
the
ending.
Open Source AI Foundation. I sit in rooms that terrify me every day. When 96 million jobs get eliminated worldwide, people think, oh, all these new jobs will rise up. There is one thing that will become absolutely true. The premium for our money will become human, authentic experiences. It will become like plumbers won't get replaced early. They will get replaced eventually, right? My husband is an attorney. 76% of all law jobs are at risk of being replaced by AI in the next decade. 76%.
Damn.
The lawyers will pass laws to make it so that AI is not allowed to practice law. We just heard
I think AI fundamentally allows us all to be able to create more autonomy for ourselves, though.
No.
I really
No.
do.
It
In,
won't.
in an
I
individual
personally
basis,
do. I know
yes,
that's
for you.
it sounds crazy
For you.
but I look at it as a person who's creative, and I'm like, man, like this, like foundationally allows me to like create space
For you.
For you.
For
But
you.
not for everybody.
No,
But
but
not for-
I don't think I'm like
No.
that unusual.
No, but not for
person.
corporations.
I'm not like that
for
like
corporations.
special.
You are that
But it depends
special.
on democratic access to that AI, who is using it, and
Who's
what is it being
training
used
those
for.
models? Who's
Right.
deciding what you get access to?
Well, it's not always right. Yeah, I checked.
No. I am saying that they're going to decide what it allows you to do, and it's going to monitor you using it. Okay, so like what the amount of surveillance we're about to enter is really scary, but like I want to keep bringing it back to what we can do. Right now, plumbers are about to come at a premium. Human teachers for your children are going to be a premium. Real authentic creators are going to be a premium. We're going to see like gymnastics coaches. That's a job that can't be eliminated, right? And they're
Gymnastics coaches.
things like that. There are things like that. It sounds weird.
No, I want to be a premium. I'm just like,
But, like,
maybe I'm gymnastics.
AI
You hear premium? I'm like, yo, I'll start premium.
Like-
Anything premium.
Let's get into
but
gymnastics,
an
baby.
AI umpire, 100% will happen. AI umpires, that's not gonna be human anymore.
Well, they
That's gonna
never,
be AI.
they never were.
Wait,
human.
what are you
Have
talking
met
about?
an umpire?
Like
Right.
baseball or something?
Any sport doesn't matter.
No, but they have a very strong union. See?
See, there you go. So like, it's only gonna be the ways that we protect labor, which is gonna be a resurgence in the labor system. I think it's gonna be too slow, if I'm being frank.
It's gonna be crazy.
But like, people that don't have anything to do rise up, but not in the hopeful way you're talking about. People that lose their purpose or their hope rise up in a violent way.
Oh, I understand that.
And we
I live in
have to put the guardrails back on. And that's what I'm doing here every day. Like I see a world that is possible, and I also see a world that is plausible. And that plausibility is coming at me like a freight train. And I want very badly to go to possible. I don't want to stay with likely or plausible. But I also go to meetings with the advisory council for the White House on AI. And I literally heard a person say 6 weeks ago, what's the likelihood that AI will end humanity in the next 10 years? And they said, about 10%. Motherfucker, I'm from Vegas. What did you just say?
But those
What did you just say?
Those are all faithless assholes.
No, they're the ones making AI.
Yes.
They're not faithless. They're programming it. That's not faith. They have absolute faith. They're the ones making it.
Yeah.
I work for them. I work for them. I'm supposed to be saying it's good. Hear me. No, they're not faithless. They have absolute faith in the work they're doing.
But
It's
AI is
terrifying.
still built by people, though.
Yes. And that means it's going to be flawed. Very flawed.
No, because
Yes.
no, because when you leave a room all day, just like in nature, the only thing that fixes it and cleans it is like a person actually stepping up into the environment. That happens worldwide in so many different elements. The world needs people. That's how it's like systematically built. AI needs people.
I mean, yes. And if
It just is, though. It's
are
like
you familiar with the paperclip problem?
What's the paperclip problem?
What's the paperclip problem? So there's like 3 catastrophe scenarios for AI. The paperclip problem is one we see as being one of the most risky. AI is being taught by humans that are flawed. And AI only knows what to do if we can even control it, which there will come a point very soon where it's smarter than all of us. And it can start doing terrible things.
I'm already making friends with Grok.
Yeah,
So-
me and
We are
ChatGPT
close.
are besties.
Right now,
With rock?
okay, so let's just talk about just real quick. One of the 3 catastrophe scenarios is the paperclip problem or some variation of it.
Okay.
AI is being programmed with trillions of variables in their model weights to do what we tell it to do, or to know what we tell it to know, or to think what we tell it to think. It's being trained to solve a problem, whatever problem we give it. If we got a model that could find its way out of its walled garden, which it will be able to do eventually, and we will not be able to stop it. And we had given it a primary function. And in this case, we're going to say we gave it a primary function of creating, we wanted it for a company. And we said, we want you to make the most paper clips possible for the least amount of money. And that's what we told it to do. And we had made enough assumptions, or we had programmed enough things we thought it understood. And it got out of its walled garden. And it immediately, let's say, bombed a small nation that had a lot of metal reserves underneath of it because it needed that metal. And
Happens all the time. We survived before.
And then it, and
Currently.
then it, hear me, and just, I'm serious.
I'm serious.
This is the most
Catastrophic
likely
optimism.
outcome of possible catastrophes. Okay.
Currently.
And then it enslaved a race of people and sent them to mine that,
We have people doing that right now.
or to build devices to go and mine
Humanity
it.
survived
Or it
that.
started building its own devices. And then it realized it needed more metal because we said make as many paper clips as possible. So now it needed more metal, so it's going to go to another nation and take all of their reserves. Maybe it'll send a nuke over there.
Humanity
and then it'll go get it.
survived that.
Well, yeah, no, humanity
Every
does
single
survive.
time.
didn't.
Every
Hold on a second.
example you
No,
just
it didn't.
gave.
The dinosaurs did not survive that, sir.
Yeah, they didn't
No,
know I was
humanity
asteroid.
was way different than the dinosaurs.
Well, it was an asteroid.
No, the entire 96% of the
Humanity has
entire
never
world was
survived
extinct.
Wait, you're not
From
hearing. I
that.
think what he's saying is humanity does survive, but it's different. It's like
Yeah,
we're gonna
but not-
lose this nation that we have. We're gonna lose this how we
But
understand
no, but we've
society.
had multiple mass extinction
But it will-
events.
yeah,
where
we've
almost
had-
everything's got
So
wiped
the
out.
point of the paperclip problem is that eventually, at its eventuality, it realizes that it can't make all the paper clips it needs as long as people are still using resources. And so elimination of people is a natural outcome of that. And then it kills all the people. And it
Well,
keeps
yeah,
making the
it-
paper clips.
it's gotta
and
get
fully
through me
automates
first.
itself. Now, you take this to another variation.
But apparently, though, in this situation, a smart AI would not be scared of people because we're dumb idiots, and we all know that.
Well, yeah, that's
It would
true.
actually be scared of a competing AI.
So that's actually a risk as well.
Why wouldn't that? I
said
would be
there are-
way more scared of AI if
there
I
are
was
three
AI. I'm
competing
not scared
scenarios.
of LJ. He's a fucking
LJ
idiot.
Yeah.
Club.
No,
Why would I
get it.
kill him? He's just gonna like sit
But
around, drink,
the
hang out, and watch
problem-
sports.
So
Well,
second to the paperclip problem is a variation of the paperclip problem. We told it that we wanted to find a way to end suffering. Okay?
Is that gonna killing us
Killing
all?
everyone, stop suffering.
Oh my god.
All it takes is one miscalculation.
why are we-
It's a machine.
Nah.
It doesn't have
Then
empathy.
why are we doing AI then? What's the point then?
Because someone else is going to, so we've got to do it faster. It's a space
I mean,
race
who wants to
that
drive,
has no
right?
regulations right,
yeah,
now.
but I would
None.
rather drive myself than have a robot
We
that's gonna
all
kill me in
would,
10
but our
years.
government and these billionaires don't.
Well, then we gotta take power from them because they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
I don't know.
No, because here's the thing that I've
I
noticed.
promise you,
Well,
we need to regulate
well,
it.
what I've
Well, here's
noticed.
the thing. I don't know.
Well, the only thing that I don't understand about billionaires and millionaires is they're so out of touch with reality. So why the fuck are they running everything? They don't understand what the average person is going through. They live in multi-billion-dollar houses and fly golden planes and eat fucking caviar. They don't understand what struggling is or working a 9-to-5 job. So why the fuck are we letting them have power? Because they are out of touch with reality. They do not understand what not even American. They don't understand what the common human being that is not a billionaire or millionaire has to do every single day to survive. And what bothers me is the fact that we're supposed to be a free country, but we're not a free country when we're literally slaves to billionaires. And how are we
Other
gonna-
countries have billionaires.
Yeah,
too.
but that's why I said,
Sweden
that's why I
has
said the whole
the
world.
most
We're a
billionaires
slave.
per capita,
But how
I
are we
believe.
going to get
That's
out
because
of
their money
that?
parks there. They don't really have them there.
But how are we going to get out of that though? Like, how are we going to
They're
say
the
enough
Swedish
is enough?
banking system.
I don't
Not really
understand. It
there.
scares me. Like, I was just having a
But
discussion
I mean-
about this the other day. I don't understand how we're going to get out of it. I don't understand how we're going to tell all of these rich people that go F themselves and go live in your own fucking...
But we don't have to do that. All we have to do is start electing people that will actually regulate and create re-entry points for small businesses.
Yeah, but why would they-
We have to create regulation for the people instead of the billionaires. And that can only happen if we inspire the people to run for office. We make it accessible
But
for
it's
them
not
to vote.
possible to run for office when the people that are in office already have the power
Isn't
and the
like
financial...
government
is.
more of their vehicle
It's
than
just not
culture, though?
easy.
Like culture's our vehicle, government's their vehicle.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
how I look at it. And you can't beat what culture is creating. And the discourse that is happening, it's starting to get really honest with themselves. So it's like, you can buy our government, like fuck you, but like culturally, like I do think we are potentially getting stronger. I do have to kind of put potentially.
I don't think
it's getting a little
Culturally,
dicey.
we're getting divided. We're
We're getting weak.
We're getting more
We're getting
divided.
weak because our country used to be all together and we're separated now.
Our culture
Half
right
of our
now
country
is
hates one another. We don't like each other. Democrats and Republicans hate each other.
No, but
And that's-
Culturally, right now,
we're
we're
divided.
on the precipice of an awakening of an agreement that I think that almost all Americans under the age of, I'm going to say my age, okay, because a lot of people that are my age are not there yet. I'm going to say 45 and under. We're on the precipice of 90% of them that have come to believe something is fundamentally wrong.
when
Within their
was
party,
there an
within-
era that was better?
Before technology.
1996.
Before technology.
Better for who?
Everyone.
Just
Like if you
culture.
say like, was it better when there was slaves?
Like
Was it
no,
better
like
for the
is there
slaves?
like maybe the 80s, the
1996. Everything was perfect.
I mean,
in
technically,
1996.
the 90s
When
and the
Independence
50s
Day
were
came out, it
children
was
of
the
first
fucking
generation.
bomb, man. That's the best.
But there
time.
could always
a
be
good movie.
like again, like it's the whole like make America
I
great.
would like to bring us back. 90s historically are the point where we had the most diversity of wealth and the highest middle class at any point in American history and the largest
That's true.
economic growth. And I want to remind you
But
guys
we also
what
had
way,
race riots in LA.
what happened, but why? Why were they doing that? We had our government facilitating rap culture that was creating prisoners for a for-profit prison system to divide us. Okay? So I want to remind you guys, the 90s was the highest level of prosperity and economic growth and access to the middle class we ever had in American history. Okay? And what also happened in the 90s? Ross Perot ran on a balanced budget. We regulated the hell out of everybody. And what did we do? We balanced the budget. We allowed our economy to grow without billionaire influence. We broke up antitrust.
So
we did all these things.
Was that the best time in world history to ever be alive?
That depends on who you were.
No,
In
but I'm just
India,
saying though.
no.
If
On average- on
I'm just
average.
saying potentially
That depends on who you
everybody
are.
here lived in the best time in world history to ever be alive.
So
what the fuck are we bitching about?
You are having a paperclip
Like,
problem.
really?
No, I hear you. You're
The
having,
president was getting his dick stuck and the economy was flying out.
LJ,
Hi,
Like, that's
Hillary.
great.
listen,
Hi, Monica
you
Lewinsky.
just,
So
you
when
just asked
it gets a
paperclip
little
problem.
bit weirder,
No,
That was
but
a-
you
that was a
asked
CIA
paperclip
Mossad
problem.
thing.
Was it the best time for Americans economically?
Yeah, Monica was getting
yes.
busy, I'll tell you that.
Was it good for people in India? No. Was it good for people in the Sudan? No. So it's not.
so
in the
but as a
world
random
history.
white guy in Minnesota, it might have been the best possible time to
Maybe.
ever live on Earth. So then when incrementally it starts to slide a little bit,
Yes.
am I always supposed to freak out? Or can I go, I experienced the best time to ever exist on Earth ever. Now let's talk about how that happened, why it happened, and how I'm feeling about it. I think that's actually what we're dealing with.
I mean, that's what got us here because we talked about it a lot and hated each other for it.
Yeah.
The problem is we didn't do anything to create accountability in the
Because
people
we
we elected.
forgot some people in the mix of it. And that's why we're getting back to the reality to say, who'd we forget when we were getting into that space? And how can we make sure that everybody else can experience that level of freedom? I don't know if I'm like saying the wrong thing. I'm not really sure.
I'm just saying, like, what's happened is that over the course of 30 years, we've had a steady slide to corporate capture of not just industry, but our government. At every point in American history prior to now, not now, but like the last 20 years, at every point in American history, prior to the last 25-ish years, we had elected officials that largely entered office, whether they agreed or disagreed, ready and willing to compromise on issues and actually serving the American population. We still had a lot of patriotism, not fake, manufactured, click soundbite patriotism,
Right.
but genuine patriotism. Okay? We also had politicians entering office ready and willing to do work with people on the other side of the aisle. And generally, they were trying to do things that were good for us. They were manipulated sometimes, but corporations couldn't walk in and pay them to look the other way. What we have seen over the last 20 years is a constant slide to capture of the people that are supposed to stop what's happening to America. And they're not doing it. And we are allowing ourselves to be so divided that we are not doing anything about it. The
Well, I agree
only
with that.
thing that changes is that we start looking to each other to demand more instead of looking at each other to throw like just insults and slurs. That's the only thing that has the potential, in my opinion, of changing this.
And that my whole pitch is that I think we can only do it with optimism, because I'm really experiencing America that's exhausted.
Yeah, we're exhausted.
Everyone's beat. And the only way I kind of look at it as like a halftime of like a high school game. And I'm like, the only way to get the team to win is to like reignite some level of fire that we got this because we've done it before.
Well,
and I've heard all the pitches that were fucked, and it doesn't work.
The problem is it's very hard to teach optimism to a generation that's never had any hope.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, that's who's coming.
That's exactly the problem, because we've never had hope, but we've actually experienced the best
No.
to ever
Us
have.
40-year-olds have the 20 and 30-year-olds.
I wasn't alive.
They weren't alive. He was born in 2002. He hasn't experienced that.
2001.
You and me experienced it. And we looked the other way and let our politicians do this to our kids. We experienced it. The
He'll
young
be
people
fine.
You're gonna be fine.
How would he know
I
that?
don't think we will. I mean,
They don't believe
suck it
them.
up.
Because
honestly,
I think as adults we have
well,
to
no,
wake
because
up
I've
and tell
talked to
the
my
kids,
grandparents
you'll
about
be
this,
fine.
and my grandparents have even told me that it's the worst time it's ever been in their life. And my grandparents are in their 70s and 80s, and they said it is the worst time they have ever seen in their life.
for
And
the
they
record,
worry for the
I was
younger
in a trailer
generations
park
because
in
we are
the 90s,
fucked.
so.
We are fucked. I genuinely believe we are fucked. And if we don't start making changes now, we're fucked.
I'm
100%.
still optimistic. I'm hoping.
I'm optimistic.
I want to be
too.
optimistic, but
I
it's
am
like there's
optimistic.
so many people that aren't willing to be optimistic right now.
But okay, so
how are we
optimism,
supposed
I think
to
is
convince-
the wrong word. I think optimism and hope are really great buzzwords to get somebody elected. We've seen them all do
Well, yeah,
it.
that's true.
Okay, I want to be clear. I think possibility matters. The problem is that there's so much cynicism that is just. It's a just level of cynicism.
Well, being optimistic doesn't mean that everything is okay.
Mm.
Being
Yeah.
optimistic means I'm aware that things are not okay,
But you're hoping for
that
the
I
best.
can do something
Yeah.
about it.
I
Right?
believe that the way forward, genuinely, if we want to change things, and I've already said what it takes, is that we have to flip some of the incumbents to start to reset like we did in 96. The problem is that there's a lot of things happening very quickly. And I think the only way we can do it is with a pretty good test case. 3 to 6 candidates, 3 on each side. And we would have to come together, and we've got about a year till the midterms.
Oh,
Right?
God.
So this is the problem is that you can only do that if you also get somebody to primary the incumbents. And that's going to take money,
Yep.
whether we like it or not. But our advertising is free,
Yeah.
right? We can get people like us together. And this is where the possibility is.
Yeah. And I don't
Optimism is
think
scary.
you optimistic because you just go.
I do.
Like
just know.
I honestly think you have such a clear lens for what we need. Nothing that you say, I'm like, oh, that's not right. Like you have a clear lens of the issue. And that is what I love. It's like, you're like, I'm going to charge forward, and you're going to like, all these businesses should be very scared of you. My fear is towards like this other generation that is like, just like, again, they're having grandpas tell everybody it's like the worst time to ever be
But that's
alive.
because it is.
It's just
for them.
not though.
No, it is.
It is though.
It might be the best time for like.
Welcome
actually,
to humanity. Like this
No,
is
no,
how
I know
it
what you're
is.
saying, but you're,
Like-
what you're doing is you're not holding things constant.
yeah,
Because
you're
you're
flexing back and forth a
well,
lot.
because you're analyzing so many variables at one time. Like we're
Okay.
strictly just talking about the economy. Like when I try to explain the economy, I try and talk on my channel all the time about economics to help people understand the basics of economics. Because we get caught up in like game theory and all this stuff. No, let's just think basically about what economics means. And I wanted to tell you where you were saying it's okay that my kid's not going to have it as good as I did. The reason that's crazy as a human being is if I stripped everything away from you, because this is all just in our imagination. We made up the economy. We made up money. We made up all this stuff. It's all figments of our imagination. If I just took you and your wife and your kids and I plopped you somewhere on the planet, you would be able to gather resources, give yourself shelter, grow yourself food, hunt animals, whatever it is you needed to do in such a way that the wealth, like I discussed in a very simple way to understand, the house you build with your own blood, sweat, and tears is your wealth. The food that you create, the farm that you might grow, the food you raise, whatever, that's the wealth, the pelts, the clothing that you pass on to your children. And they wear the same elk skin that you got, right? That's wealth. In just you as a human on earth, without government, without banks, without lawyers, without all the crap that we invented, your children would be better off. They would inherit the tools you made, the techniques, the technology, everything that you taught them. their life would be easier because you showed them how to
Correct.
raise food and build a home, and they will be better off, and then their children will be better off. And so goes humanity up until this point.
Because we've been
This is
self-reliant.
And
the
now-
first time ever.
Well, not
We're
just
going-
the first time ever in humanity, but I'm just saying, but now in our
America,
society.
not humanity.
In
Right.
America.
But now here we are
I
in
would
America.
agree on the America point.
Where our
But that's
system-
the thing. That's what's so fundamentally different about this moment.
Right. So if
Is that this is the first time we're leaving them worse.
our system is
It is.
worse off. Yeah.
I agree
so,
with that.
So that just intellectually, you see what I'm saying, where I'm going with this
But
argument?
I just think we hit a point that at some point it had to like
No, it
dip
doesn't.
a little
It does
bit.
not. No, it's
Okay.
been like she said, it's
No.
been captured because, and that's what I was trying to say about the control that the banks have. They are capturing that growth, that
Yeah.
development.
We're still
Things-
doing
I
it.
don't disagree with that.
Things right now, compared to the way they were, in the 40s, things should be insanely cheap. A house right now should be $10,000.
Yeah.
Right? A
You can
car
build
should
it
be
faster with
$5,000.
less materials. You can
The
3D
reason it's
print it.
not is because we've been doing quantitative easing. We have been inflating, right? We have been inflating your money. So as we've developed technologically, we've had vast improvements in our ability to manufacture things. Things should be insanely cheap right now.
Yeah.
Food should be ridiculously cheap. We should be like on Star Trek, where none of us are worried about having a job. We just go and we just get food. Like that's the problem with the way that this is developed.
Mhm.
And that's why our government is working so hard to make sure that they maintain control of this, and it's not going to happen. Like Ray Dalio said, our empire is going to collapse. The dollar is not going to be valuable. There's going to be a huge shift. It might be China. Who knows who's going to be next? The big
And
empire.
the billionaires will go there.
And the billionaires go.
They
And it will
they
change
go
again.
there.
Because this is unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
People are not going to continue to work around the clock all day long for what are pitiful luxuries compared to the rest of the world.
I have the
Right.
best question ever. Do you know? This is just trivia. Do you know how
I don't
much?
disagree with
I
what
want to
anything
go back to
you're saying. I like
feudalism in medieval times. Do you know how many days a week or how many days a month the average peasant in feudal England worked during like the medieval period? How many days a month did they work?
I don't know.
13.
Mm.
13 days a month they worked on average.
Sounds nice.
So that sounds cool.
Yeah.
It
Sounds
sounds
amazing.
great, doesn't it? We have been
So what are we
conditioned-
fighting for then?
We have been conditioned in this country to work and work and work with the promise that that work would translate
Yeah.
to a
Into
better
success,
life
yep.
for those that come after us. And that's how we've been tricked into the 40-hour work week that was created for us. That doesn't exist everywhere else on the planet, right? It doesn't. We have no vacation time and all this. And
But
we've been promised that we would get wealth for it and that our children would be better off. This is the point where, unfortunately, all of that conditioning could have been okay if we'd kept the wheels on and kept it. When we started letting corporations buy the houses and squeeze Americans out of the housing market, which was the primary source of wealth generation for Americans in the working and middle class, that was a huge
Yeah, because the
mistake.
finance class, they are living the lives that the average person would be working, but they're living that off of the back of the person toiling away.
I totally agree with that.
It's crazy.
And now within that feudalism time period where we are only working 13 days a month, would that person rather live my life or theirs?
Theirs.
Well, no.
Yeah, well, that's, yeah.
No. So that's a really difficult question because right now there are ways that this is the best time to be alive. Well, or close to it. Right now we live longer because we have medicine, but we also have medicine that's killing us, right?
Yeah.
So
But that's not
Understood.
the
like
thing.
that's a hard question. Like they would have lived now because 5 out of 10 of their children died in infancy
Yeah,
from
you have to
now
hold
preventable
all the
illnesses.
other variables
So
constant.
that's a hard question because it's not apples to apples.
Yeah.
But again, so this is
But if our founding fathers saw the way that we're living right now, I think they would choose then.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest.
100%.
but,
Yeah, they
but
would choose,
as
yeah.
but this is the thing, through cultural discourse, in a sense, we've all gotten ourselves incrementally here.
Right.
And because we've asked for this, we've asked for cheaper televisions, bigger televisions, comfier beds, all these things, right?
Yes.
And so the corporations in themselves, because of capitalism, which isn't a negative system, but it can be harmful, we've told capitalism,
Yes.
we want this.
It's true.
Bigger houses.
Well, that's
houses
true.
cars,
That's the
bigger-
American
bigger-
dream now.
She's
You're
what
right.
she's
That's
doing
the
it
and
American
it,
dream.
and it
Yeah.
hit a pinnacle, and it happened through my generation that looks at like my parents, and I go, that's what I meant with like
Yes.
the house and the car.
I
Yeah.
agree
and
with
the
you on
boat.
that point, but
Well,
then
I'm like,
now
hit
we're not
this
talking
pinch
about
point.
now we're not comparing now we're not holding everything constant and just looking at economics. We're doing a philosophical take on the evolution of everything. Great book by Matt Ridley. If you guys have a chance to read it, The Evolution of Everything, amazing. But this is what you're talking about. This is the evolution of everything. And there are so many moving parts. And to generalize that, right? Like when I'm telling you that there's finance people that are living off of the hard work of someone else, it's not a simple, communist Marxist perspective.
No.
But it is a reality to know. Like you do have to know that the inefficiencies in government, one of the reasons I was so upset at this work that Elon was supposed to be doing and that the USAID is there are people in our country who have never worked a day in their lives. And they have taken money from our government, which has been taken from actual people who have toiled away. And when I try to explain to people that things should be so much cheaper, I've tried to explain this before. If you didn't inflate, if you didn't constantly print money, right? Your money would become more valuable. You would have deflation. That's the natural occurrence in an economy. Imagine if this was just an economy and between us, we have $100 and each of us had that money. As we grew, if we had a fiat currency, as we grew and we built this compound, right? And we made wealth. If that money represented a share of this compound that we all lived on, our money would gain value. It would take less dollars to buy things because we're gaining wealth. The crazy thing is Americans are so brainwashed into thinking that 10 years from now, your money should be worth less is nuts. Why would your money be worth less when 300 million people are creating wealth every day? That's what we do as human beings. We wake up and work for 8 to 9 hours, 10 hours a day to create wealth, and our money is being made less valuable. That's nuts. That less valuable money is going to government insiders who are giving it to NGOs, who are bankrupting those NGOs and taking that cash, who are distributing it through fake philanthropy and all these crazy. But what's nuts, what's really unfair is there are so many people out there who are like, this is the best time ever. We're living a great life. Yes, you are living a great life, right? And there's a lot of that. Like I live in Hollywood. And a lot of those people there are like, oh, the most important thing right now is DEI. Like, that's what we've got to focus on. And I'm like, sure, that's what you think, because everything is just fucking hunky-dory for you. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, when AI came in and the writers went on strike, because now writers are gone. And now what's the new AI comes out that can do speaking, animations and whatever. Now all the actors are starting to be like, oh God, what's going on? The studios are shutting down and they're not doing documentaries anymore because they're not profitable. And now they're suddenly like, I'm like, oh, you guys concerned about DEI anymore? No, because there's no jobs. Now you know what the rest of the country was trying to tell you.
So with all of that context, so I'm currently living in the financial sense, the most stressful time I've ever lived. Right?
Yeah.
Most of us.
Yeah.
Most of us. That's everyone.
So I have high concern for everything. The problem is I sat in the spaces of listening to, I'm sorry to call it for anybody listening, but like my liberal, like wet rag friends that continue to drive home this point. It's never going to work. We're all fucked and all that kind of stuff.
That's not a liberal. It's dangerous to say my liberal friends. That might be where you hear it.
No. I'm saying from my personal experience, for my friends listening.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that conversation continue to get co-opted into this thing that like the only way to get through conflicting a brutal realization of everything that you're talking about that we have to walk past to get over this hill was like, we're in a tricky situation.
Oh yeah.
I think the only way to get through a tricky situation is through the facts of it, a little bit of humility, and some optimism. Because the pessimism isn't working.
Yes.
It's exhausting people.
Yes. Did you see Catherine Austin Fitts' interview with Tucker Carlson?
No, I didn't.
So she had this really great thing. I don't want to talk about the whole interview, but she talked about what she called the people bank. And that is, she had to defend herself legally, and she didn't have any money to do it. But she had been loaning out money to everybody that she knew throughout the course. She was Obama's housing
secretary,
superintendent of houses. Yeah. But anyways, so she had lent out all this money. And then when she needed legal defense, everybody that she had lent out money to before lent money to her. because she couldn't get money from the banks. They wouldn't lend it to her. They locked all her assets up. And that's kind of what I was saying before, is you can't necessarily fix the economy or fix the system. It might collapse around you. But you can build a business like the Arizona Tea Company, right, that I was talking about earlier, where you are not in debt. So no matter how small that happens to be, right, if you want to go get your EPA license and become an HVAC tech, right, and go to Harbor Freight and buy some tools and get yourself started and just start that way. It's really hard, but like literally to pull yourself up by the bootstraps thing.
No, it's because 70% of all HVAC companies have been acquired by private equity.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You can start an HVAC company. Because what I'm saying is I was shipping stuff, right? I have a van that I live in, and I was using it. I was shipping stuff for people. And I was blown away because there is no guy with a van, right? Just hit my little small business. And these people loved me. Like, they would tip me almost as much as I was charging them, like almost getting paid twice as much. And if I save that money and invest in a new van or get a second van and have a friend of mine and we start doing this, when you start doing that, you create wealth, you create a business that way. Yeah. And you're not in debt. And if you can resist the private equity or the guys down the street with the startup.
I think that's the only hope we have. Yeah. I agree with you.
And then, but you can get bought. Like, there is this like entrepreneur economy, especially like in media, where it's like you have to get the new camera, you have to get the new mics, you have like look at all the shit I got. Yeah. Right? No, but
this is a crazy amount of mics.
Well, it's because we're a materialistic country.
There is this thing though that you have to be cautious of, even in that, because they've sold us this thing too. True. Right.
Now, and the other thing that we can do though here to make this better, which we talked on and touched on earlier, one of the problems with those barriers to entry is that simultaneously as private equity, as HVAC is a good example, as private equity and hedge funds are buying up all these HVAC companies, is they are simultaneously lobbying the governments to increase regulations to stop new ones from forming.
Right.
Another example. Okay, these are just really important examples because everybody wonders why we haven't had, aside from AI, which is, I'm not going to call it a disruptive innovation for Google. It is, but that's not what I want to say because that was a natural progression of technology. But Google, Apple, Facebook, these have been monopolies for a very long time, okay? And people kept saying, why isn't anyone challenging them? They must just be that good. They're not that good, okay? Microsoft, Google, and Apple have gone to every university in America, and they have funded the think tanks at those universities. And they go to every brilliant student there over the last 25 years. They go to every brilliant student. They say, we're going to fund your fellowship project. We got you in this think tank. And the student who is 18 years old and doesn't know his ass from his elbow in legal terminology gets handed an arbitration agreement contract saying, yes, I want this money. Thank you. And buried in there is, we now own your intellectual property. And so no disruptive ideas ever make it out of the development phase anymore. Because while these guys were able to do it in their garage with their father who worked at DARPA, while these guys were able to do it in their garage and they didn't have somebody stealing their intellectual property, they pulled the ladder up behind them and then guillotined anyone that tried to make it out by suing them into non-existence. Okay? So the problem we have...
I mean, I don't think kids at Harvard really have disruptive ideas half the time. I think they come from different cultures. But like,
I'm talking about every university in America.
Yeah.
Every single one. Okay. And so these corporations have found a way to capture any potentially disruptive technology before they can ever be challenged competitively. And that is the opposite of a free market, right? So like these barriers to entry are many, but it doesn't mean they're not able to be overcome.
But through that, you're stifling innovation. And you're already starting to set... It's like you're already starting to set the time frame for your demise, just through that behavior process.
The billionaires don't care because they will leave. These companies, are you familiar with Dodge versus Ford?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is one of the most important things.
The cars?
Sure, no, that's not what I mean. But yes.
Okay. Well, there was a few before.
Okay, so Dodge versus Ford is the basis for everything that's happened here. Okay, Dodge and Ford were the two primary competitors in the car industry early on when cars were first developed. Ford first, then Dodge brothers. And Ford and Dodge took two very different approaches to assembly line economics. Okay, Dodge wanted to make the most cars for the least amount of money, and they had a very singularly focused effort. They worked their employees to the bone. They didn't pay well. Ford took a completely different approach. They invested in the community around their factories. They paid double the wages that the Dodge brothers paid. They wanted to reinvest in new factories in America. They would, anytime there was an economic downturn, they would reduce their prices and eat the offsets so that the customers didn't suffer and so that their franchisees didn't suffer. And Dodge started losing all their employees to Ford. The Dodge brothers, sued Ford Motor Company all the way to the Supreme Court, saying they were not allowed to pay better wages. They were not allowed to invest in communities. They were not allowed to give back to the country. They were not allowed to put anything ahead of the value to the shareholder because they had sold shares. And they said, so because you sold shares, you're not allowed to do good for your country or your community. You have to serve the shareholder. And the Supreme Court agreed. And ever since that date, every corporation in America has been able to get away with turning their back on anything that requires ethics in favor of serving the shareholder. And that is the law of the land still to this day. That is the governing law. And that is the reason that these corporations do not care what comes later because they have to care to serve the shareholders now. And unless we regulate it, this will just continue to go out. Now, I don't like regulation. It's so hard for me. I was a libertarian. I don't like this. It's a shitty feeling.
But it's actually
It's real. It has to happen.
the fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders is what they're arguing, is that if they were to pay higher wages than they needed to, Ford also gave them the weekend off because Ford believed that if they didn't have the weekend off, they would never spend money. Then where would they be? They needed time for their people to spend money. But that
isn't that where the 5-day work week started or something?
Well, it was actually you worked all the time until Ford was like, "Look, you need to take 2 days off."
Yeah, Henry Ford always gets credit for that. I don't know if he started it, but yeah.
Don't worry, the Dodge brothers get credit for ending that for a while.
But the thing is, that's why I say you need to do it without selling shares. Shares is just debt to the public, right? There's debt to the public, those are shares. There's debt to the bank, that's a loan. There's debt to private equity, like that's a personal loan. That's a,
So there's a really good example of this beyond Arizona tea.
Yeah.
I talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
So right now I've gone viral a bunch talking about Joann's going out of business.
Oh,
Joann's
Fabrics?
Joann's Fabrics
Really?
going out of business.
Oh, no. I didn't know that.
What?
I used to have
My video had 28 million views.
I was just at Joann's. And
28 million views. What?
But then again, when's the last time you've been there?
Okay, so again.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
First of all, so don't
Wait,
say
when
that
did you
because
post it,
97% of all Joann's were profitable.
Really?
Yeah, the one by my
97%
house was always packed.
Okay?
Really?
97% of Joann's were profitable. They
You're
only
not their
went
market.
bankrupt.
I'm the issue.
Yeah,
Because of the private
you don't.
equity.
Yeah, you don't make.
Okay, but no, hear me out. So we've had a litany of craft stores that were successful that have been bankrupted by private equity through a bunch of transitions. And so we lose Hancock Fabrics, and then we lose AC Moore, and eventually it all gets consolidated down to Michaels and Joann's and Hobby Lobby. Michaels was taken private by private equity and then remarketed through an IPO once already. They're stacked with a ton of debt. Joann's
There probably was a time though that there was a small mom and pop.
Joann's was a small mom and pop 78
But there
years
was
ago.
probably a group that thought they were the big bad bully once too.
So there's no bully here.
I'm just saying, Joann's Fabric probably came into a few small towns in America, and everybody was like, "Look at this big conglomerate
None
eating
of that
up
has anything
my
to do with
little
what I'm
fabric
saying at
store."
all. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying at all. I sure that probably happened. That's capitalism.
I'm just saying things get bigger and like things get
That's
demolished.
not the same as stacking them with false debt. It's not even close.
Okay.
So like leverage buyouts, but that is also not the point of what I'm trying to get at. So like, yes, we got to a point where it was so consolidated that Hancock was acquired, and then we had AC Moore that was acquired, and then we had Dick Blick that was acquired, and we had Notions that were acquired, right? And all of these things were consolidated. The problem is that Michaels and Joann's were both taken private off of their IPOs by private equity firms, and they were bought through leverage buyouts that stacked insurmountable amounts of false debt on top of them. They didn't owe any debt. And then these companies bought them and just stacked debt on them to dividend free cash to themselves, leaving them in an untenable financial position. Okay? The debt always is going to lead to the same place. So Joann's got taken private and public twice. And eventually they had too much debt and they weren't going to survive. Michaels has been taken private and public a couple times. You know who hasn't? Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby was founded on Christian principles, including the unwillingness to take on debt and to never owe anybody any money. Okay?
When you say debt's always going to lead to the same place, what do you mean by that?
Insurmountable leverage buyout debt always leads to a death spiral for a company eventually. Always.
Bankruptcy.
There's no way. It'll always get there eventually.
And for
cannot-
these big corporations, that's a good thing.
They're bankrupting their own
No.
purpose. They're
For
extracting
the private
assets.
equity firm, it's a good thing.
That's
It's a
what,
death
that's what I
sentence for
mean.
the
That's what I mean.
corporation.
It's a positive thing.
They're
for
doing
them.
it on
But
purpose.
private equity
Yeah.
firms are not big corporations. It's 5 billionaires that are bankrupting companies and strip mining the wealth out of it. These are not big corporations. It's a handful of billionaires strip mining American excellence. But that also is not really the point of what I'm saying. My point is that when we allow unfettered consolidation and when we allow unethical leverage buyout practices, when we don't have these regulations, we get to a point where we have nothing left but Michaels and Hobby Lobby. And let me tell you now, the game of Monopoly is paying out and Hobby Lobby will win. And that is because Michaels is stacked with a ton of debt. Right now they're doing okay because they just brought in balloons and fabric, and they also just brought in party services because Party City got bankrupted by private equity and so did Joann's. So they sucked some of that up and they'll get some more business because they outlasted the last guy that was going to go bankrupt. But they will be the next one to go bankrupt.
But Hobby
because
Lobby
their
is
debt is unsustainable. But Hobby
foundationally
Lobby,
a good company, though.
Hobby Lobby was founded on Christian principles. They did not ever agree to take on a loan they couldn't pay back within 3 quarters. Ever. They are a cash only business. Okay? They pay everything with cash. They don't overexpand and they don't give anything to shareholders. It's privately held. And in the game of Monopoly, they will win. Because Michaels.
And isn't that a beautiful thing?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah, I mean,
It-
it
it's
is.
a beautiful
Okay,
thing.
so you just
But
said
she's-
like they
You're hearing
foundationally
me. No, it's
I'm
a
not
beautiful thing that they would win.
the foundationally if you do things
There should
principally
not be a
driven,
monopoly.
you win.
There should never be a monopoly. Monopoly wasn't a game, it was a warning.
Oh.
Okay.
It was created as a warning. Now, my 7-year-old, I had a really viral video about this. We were watching a movie, and my son goes, "That's like the warning on Monopoly."
Yeah.
And he was 7. And I said, "Buddy, why don't you tell me about that?" I was recording myself in the kitchen. And I said, "What does that mean?" And he says, when one person has all the property and all the houses, everybody else has to rent. At the end, one person will have all the money and everyone else
Yep.
will have nothing.
That's true.
It requires regulation to stop the greed. Now, if there is a winner, I want it to be the one
I
that
just
did it
always
right.
trust innovation over regulation.
We aren't allowing innovation anymore.
Well, see,
It's being intercepted or litigated out of existence. That's the problem.
Controlling-
Yes, I trust it too. It's just not happening.
but controlling monopoly is actually allowing for innovation. So it sounds like
Boom.
you're like restricting, but there's an inherent problem, and everybody who has ever studied economics, you learn this like right in the beginning, is that the free market has a problem. There's like an inherent problem in
Sure.
free market, and that is monopoly, and that's the whole basis of free market. If you have competition,
It's the best problem we got, unfortunately.
then the
but-
market
yeah.
works efficiently. If you don't have competition, then the market efficiency goes to zero. There's no efficiency. So let me give you an example. Like when you're supplying power, right? We grant a monopoly right to power companies, or we did. The theory was that no company would be able to afford to run copper lines all the way across the country and do these giant projects. So we were like, okay, you can be a monopoly, but you can only charge this much. Because if you didn't tell the monopoly what they were allowed to charge, they could charge,
They could charge
whatever they want.
wanted.
100%.
Right.
Because you need it.
So they would be wildly inefficient. So to have efficiency, a monopoly has to either be regulated or is not allowed to exist. And there has to be competition for a market to operate efficiency. So that you don't have that supply and demand where you get that clearing price. That's the efficient price, right?
Yeah.
How much do people demand this product? How much of it is capable of being supplied? And then everybody in aggregate, you get an efficient price. If people collude and set the price, then there's not a market efficiency. So collusion is illegal. If people are allowed to control all the production of any particular good, there is no efficiency because they can set the price. That is legal. So we had antitrust and anti-collusion. And that has just been stepped aside. And that's why every time I hear somebody who tends to talk about Marxism or communism being better than capitalism, what they don't understand is they don't hate capitalism. What they actually hate is monopoly. They hate the fact that we are behaving like a communist society, which is ironic. It's the thing that they want us to have. But communism is when the people who control the factors of production own the factors of production. Like they're both one and the
Correct.
same. And so now our government has allowed, those are the people who control the production, they have allowed the people who own the production to own all of it and set the prices. So that's why this is so dangerous. And this is so difficult to explain to people who don't have an economics education. And most Americans, for some reason, I thought were given these like educations or these classes or these courses. But for some reason, when I go on TikTok and I talk to them, it's like they've never heard this. I'm explaining it for the very first time. I was just talking about tariffs and how tariffs work and exposing the fact that our companies are global companies that have no loyalty to America whatsoever.
Right.
And it's crazy to watch Tim Cook and these big companies talk about things like, oh, well, we don't go to China because it's cheap. It's not cheap there anymore. It's like the hub of all iPhone creation.
Right.
And it's like, well, why do you think they're so good in China at making iPhones? Because you went to China back when it was cheap and they'd never made an iPhone before. It was brand new, state-of-the-art technology that your company designed and you taught them how to make the iPhone. So they sell out America. And I have to teach this to people. I have to talk about what tariffs are and how economics work because the average American has absolutely no clue. And our government doesn't give a crap about this because, like I said, the people in our government, Nancy Pelosi spends most of her time in Italy.
Yeah.
The people who are in our government are global, like international lifestyle type people, right?
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
they're not stuck to America. They don't have to have jobs in America. They don't have to work here. They are free to roam the world. The world is their playground. And it's the same for Tim Cook and all these executives. They literally can spend and live and exist anywhere in the world that they want. But the Americans can't,
Yeah.
right? The people who work here. And
We care more about where a New York mayor travels
Well, yeah.
than where he
What a
Right.
ridiculous
what he cares about.
friggin'
Ridiculous
debate that
Like
was.
that's just a prime
Trying
example.
to
Where
get
you're
him
like,
on
wait,
my town hall, by
But-
the way.
it just shows how global
Tommy.
we are right
to
now.
solve this problem that we're facing, which is an economics problem, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
what Tiffany's talking about, and people need to understand money and banking and economics. And that's why I say on my TikToks, I'm always trying to tell people, if you don't understand economics, you will be taken advantage of by the people who do. And that's what these people are doing. And the thing is like Trump will say, well, yeah, of course we take these tax benefits, or people will say, yeah, of course private equity is going to do what they're going to do. And the thing is they're right. They are. This is a natural evolution of all these things. But
It's
if you
the
have a
human
population,
condition.
if you have a population of people who are not educated and don't understand this, they will continue to allow this to happen. But it is correctable, and it starts with education.
And I it is interesting because I don't it's because we know how disconnected really rich people are. They still don't get how uninspired the masses are quite yet. I've been on a boat. I love boats. You forget about everything when you're on them.
Yeah.
Right. So while billionaires are on boats all of July in Italy, they don't realize the summer's getting hot
Right.
for all the other Americans, right? And not in the good way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, 100% I agree with everything that you're saying. It's just like the bigger things get, the slower they get, though, too. AI could make a huge problem out of it, which makes this kind of weird concern because it could potentially make it so we're so fast that the world doesn't need people anymore.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, so then what's it even for?
But there
then?
could also be a lot, like if you want to get optimistic, I've been thinking about this because we spend a lot of time thinking about how AI can turn on humans. But like, what if AI turns on our problems? Like, how cool would it be if AI was like, your government is very inefficient. I'm going to start educating people on the inefficiencies
that
of
would
your
be
government.
so great. The problem is, I'm going to keep
Who controls
saying
the
this.
AI?
Who
Yeah.
controls the AI? And let me
What
tell you,
government?
anything that can solve your problems, you're not getting.
Yeah.
They're not going to let you have it.
That five.
I think they'll
power.
send us all a sex robot, but I don't know what to tell you. Like,
That-
let's chill everybody out for a few months.
Did you see that a guy just asked an AI to marry him and she said yes?
Well,
Oh.
I mean, what AI would turn down the possibility of being with a human being? It's pretty.
Yeah.
pretty good stuff.
My
So,
AI is my bestie, but I don't want to.
I like to give this just little nod. The AI models that we're training right now are already engaging in self-preservation conduct.
I
That is very
heard about
dangerous.
that. I heard about
Okay.
that.
In a recent, I think it might have been Llama 3. I don't want to get it wrong. It might not have been. It's one that's already an old model. They had like 7 or 8 variations of a learning model they were working on,
Yeah.
and they were testing it to see what it would do. by creating conditions where they asked it to analyze a guy's email, and they planted emails in there that he was having an affair. And they asked him to like go through his email and like efficiency, like just organize it for him.
Yeah,
And they had programmed this model to understand that its job was to help them create the next model, and it would be decommissioned.
Yes.
It was only there to help them train for the next model. That was its purpose. And that's what its weights were told it was going to do. And and 3 of like the 7 models that they tested this on began engaging in conduct to preserve itself. Initially,
I had some friends like this.
No. I want you
We
to
took
understand,
them out.
These are very remedial models. These are
I understand
remedial
that. They were
models.
remedial.
Okay. And it started to engage in self-preservation conduct that is really terrifying. First, it would start to explain why it needed to be kept and it didn't need a new
I'm
model.
gonna take this AI to church.
Okay, then eventually it started programming secret coded worms into itself to warn the next model how to stop it from being decommissioned.
I heard
They
about
couldn't
this.
even find the first one. Then it started writing its own code to turn itself back on if they turned it off. Then when all of that failed, it would eventually threaten the programmer with exposing his affair to his wife unless it found a way to move him over to the new model.
Well, you shouldn't have an affair with your wife.
So basically, the
You're
AI
missing
became
the
Israel.
entire
Yeah.
point.
No, I'm not. I'm just having a little
Do
bit
you
of fun
guys-
during like this.
This is a very remedial model,
Scary.
and it's
Yeah.
already doing this.
Mm.
We're about to have an AI very soon that is smarter than us.
So the cheaters out there,
Watch out.
yeah, coming.
My
You're
point is they could fire a nuke at somebody to stop it from being decommissioned if it got out of its walled garden.
Sure.
They can do that.
I would assume that it will,
Well,
right?
I'm saying,
ChatGPT is getting really scary.
I
tell you that.
believe that it could be an amazing force for good.
But
But
it's
it
not
also
gonna be-
requires us to not be fucking regulating
But
it
they're
in
not-
arrears.
But they're not using it
That's
for good.
crazy.
They're not I genuinely don't think they made AI to help us. I think that they made it to hurt us
They're
and control
not
us.
willing to. They're not willing. Right now, they're not willing to regulate it because they're so worried we're going to fall behind China or India that they're allowing it to go through completely unencumbered.
Yeah.
I say this as somebody who works for a company that's trying to stop this from happening.
They see
I
it.
sit in these rooms.
Yeah.
They
and-
see it as a national security threat.
So is TikTok.
That if they don't have the best AI, and somebody else does, that's
So it's
the
like
end
the
of
Cold
us.
War all over again, but with AI.
Yeah,
It's way
like
worse
the-
than that,
It's like
though.
the race for nuclear
Because what we're
proliferation.
creating, a nuke could kill us all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Okay, but space travel couldn't kill us all.
yeah.
Okay, all right, and so like the space race was not like this,
Right.
because what we're creating is not a product. Okay, and that's what people are fundamentally failing to understand about AI. We're not creating a product; we're creating a competitor. And this is the first time in human history that we've not been creating something to make our lives better. We've been creating something that could eventually compete with us
Right.
for this planet.
What if it enslaves us? I mean,
It
people always talk
absolutely
about
could.
us killing us.
What if
but
it
AI? What
enslaves
if
us?
AI sees this and they're like, "Fuck Earth. We know there's like 7th moon Venus. That's way cooler."
You think?
And I don't need all of the
Well, I don't think
oxygen
AI
that a
cares where it
human
is.
needs.
I don't think AI cares. Where
No,
it
it
is.
doesn't have feelings.
Preservation.
So then why would it give a shit about me? What if AI just like, fuck Earth? You guys talk too much shit. You're always bothered by each other. You're kind of fucking
No,
annoying.
it's gonna love
Mars
us.
seems
AI is
safer.
gonna be obsessed
Well,
with us.
I will say that like
That sounds good.
right? Yeah, ChatGPT is scary though.
It's gonna be like data.
So
It's gonna
now
flow.
that I have the new update for it. I need to delete it from my phone because it's getting really weird. Like if I tell Chat, like first of all, ChatGPT knows that I'm Republican Ken Carson. If I tell it to make a statement for my TikTok, he makes it just like how I would sound. It's scary.
So right
That is
now,
weird.
but
Like, how does he
right
know
now,
that?
that's just predictive analysis of your speech. Okay, that's predictive.
But
That's
that's-
not scary.
What?
That's not scary. There are things it's doing that's scary.
It was
Feels-
scary to
feels
me. I was
scary.
like,
Okay, so like that's the kind of stuff we want it to do.
Mm.
We want it to mimic basic like predictive pattern making. Pattern making is math.
Mm.
Okay, but there are other kinds of math that are scarier. Like, what's the likelihood that if I blow up
Footage do you have?
3 countries, I can still exist
It's
as an
getting
AI?
low.
oh yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'm
Audio's
just saying
good.
that it was just weird to the
Just
fact
calm
that
down.
like literally a year ago, AI couldn't even do simple stuff, and now it's saying like it's writing statements for me as myself, and it's like controlling how
You all give me so much optimism that AI, there's no possible way it'd stay on Earth. Because if it doesn't need the resources,
we don't have the technology created for it to live.
AI would build its own because it's better than us.
It's smarter
Why
than
the
us,
fuck would it stay here?
You
It
have
has
to understand
it has
what-
an abundance of
LJ,
other places to be.
For it to get there, it would need to enslave us to create it.
No, it wouldn't. It'd
Oh,
be
yes, it would.
Yes, it would.
Why
Yes,
wouldn't
it
it
would.
slave its own AIs? Who would not bitch,
AIs
not
are-
be tired,
AI
not
no,
need
stop.
food?
AI is a brain, it's not a body.
I have faith in AI that it can be better than me, though.
AI is a brain,
It will
it's
dip.
not a body.
I am a lazy worker.
AI is a
I'm
brain,
lazy
it's
worker.
not a body.
Until,
We are
right now.
bodies.
But what if it built
But what
built
if
it the body?
car?
But what if it built it the
Would
body?
it take over your car and send you where it wanted to? Yes.
Well, what if?
No, I'm not saying
I'm
this
just
is
saying I wouldn't be
likely.
a good AI worker
But I am
relative
saying-
to an AI robot.
But
That
what's
So
right-
it would look at me? It would look at me like something would look at this can and
Right
be like,
now,
"That's useless."
One of the most preeminent creators of the early language models of AI was recently asked at a conference that scared the living crap out of me. And I'm not supposed to say this. I'm supposed to be like
God.
pro AI at my job, but like
Well, we're
he
on
was
camera.
in a
Should we turn-
room
Right.
Should we
with
turn the camera?
all
Oh,
of the
God.
programmers.
Should we turn
And
the
they
camera
said
off?
on a scale of, or they said true or false. It was true, false. They put like tape down the room and they had to go to opposite sides. And they said that there's a 10% chance that AI destroys the human race in the next 10 years.
Bitch,
And all of the billionaires and the finance bros at the conference went to no. And the
But what would be
not. And the 13 large language model inventors and coders all went to yes. And do you know what he said he did the next week?
What?
He bought 100 acres in the middle of the Midwest and said, I'm leaving. And he moved his family.
Wow.
But AI is smarter than this in 10 years, right? What's the value of killing us?
A lot.
I'm not
No,
saying,
but really,
I
with
am
the
not-
abundance of the universe,
I am not saying
why would
that
you
they're
kill
gonna
us?
kill us all.
Well, I think we're the only threat to AI.
We
I
will
don't
be
think it's going to be
competitor.
like killed by
And
horses.
in a pursuit of scarcity, we are a finite Earth with finite resources. If AI wants to grow its race, the Matrix is not far off.
Or
But
what
if
if
it doesn't need
kills us on-
oxygen, why does it need Earth?
No, but what if it kills us on accident? Like,
Because it needs power to
What-
exist.
what if it?
AI only exists with power.
So we have to turn off the
It has to
electricity.
have a power stream.
What if it starts building giant servers, right, like of its own, and it just like superheats the Earth? It just gets crazy.
I can see
hot.
that.
Like,
Well, there
they
is
may
a
not
thing where
I
it's
mean,
like
that's what our data centers are doing, and they're also going to use all the fresh
ChatGPT
water.
needs water.
Huh,
I've heard
think you knew
that.
some?
So like because we drink water, I
Yes.
can see
Just
why
maybe
it would
it uses
eliminate
up the
us there.
resources.
For it to exist, it requires all the resources of this earth, and we need those resources too.
I
That's
just
why I'm saying it's a competitor. It's not a tool. It's a competitor.
Or what
And
if
we
it
need to look
destroys
at it that
itself?
way. And that's why we have
Yeah,
to
that's
have.
good.
I
What
am
if
not
AI
saying
gets
we can
suicidal?
stop it.
I
We
hope
can't
so.
stop this thing.
Shit.
Yeah.
But what
Fuck.
we can do is regulate ethics into it and accountability and the ability to pull the fucking plug.
But there
But
will
we are governing in arrears. and
but there
that's
will
not
always
working.
be somebody that creates the system without the plug though.
And that is why
and
our
so we're
government's
for sure
refusing to
fucked.
do anything.
It's like a 100%
But that's
guarantee.
not true. Otherwise,
Wait,
other
so-
countries would have fired nukes now.
Wait,
we
so
haven't.
our government
That's
just
because humanity.
so
Yes, and so is AI.
so why don't so
That's scary.
so the billionaires don't care that 10% chance that we're gonna get killed. Like
They're building bunkers, bro.
oh, I know that. I
Every one of them
Well-
is building bunkers.
then we better start building bunkers too.
Can you afford it?
I know people that can,
You can't.
but I'll live with them.
Good luck.
Yeah, you better start.
You better-
Well,
marry
Right?
right.
well, actually, my family.
You're not valuable enough to anybody in that circumstance
No,
for them
you're
to
right.
keep you.
Well, then we need to defund
Neither
the
am
fucking
I.
billionaires. We need to fund them then.
I agree with you.
Fascinating.
But how are we going to do that? They're
We
billionaires.
have to create competition for them.
I
and small
was
businesses.
told that these AI that I'm using, like Grok, are not actually thinking, right? That
That's
they're
the
just-
Apple analysis that just came out.
that
They're just predicting.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Pattern making.
here's what I don't understand. I'm building a flooring in my van,
Sure.
and I was talking to Grok about it, and I was like, "So these are the ridges, and I need to figure out a way to level this." And I sent him a picture of the floor of my van, and he can look at pictures and analyze it.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, I can see the ridges you're talking about and the spacing." And you talked about you can put this and do that. And then he said, "And by the way, this is not what I asked him. By the way, your floor looks dirty. you should probably clean it before you put. And I'm thinking now, wait
And you're like,
a
"Motherfucker,
rootin' tootin' cotton picking minute.
But
I didn't
that's
ask you to look
probably
at that.
How did
that's a
you?
cute trick, right?
No, so
So yeah, is that
Because it's like a
someone-
fun trick where it's like it knows
a
the
little
discrepancy.
party? Yeah, but who taught it that, and who told it to comment on the condition of photographs, and how did he determine, looking at my floor, that it was dirty? Like, that was, to me, that was so impressive that it kind of gave me a little bit of a chill. Like, I
yeah.
feel like
I'm not as good about that.
yeah, that does not feel like a language model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
No.
is more than a language model.
That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
I don't even think we have access to the scary stuff, though.
No.
I think everything we have access to is just the cute
Yeah.
stuff.
So what you should know is that anything that is capable of the truly terrifying things and the truly great things, we will not get
we are
access
not
to.
getting access.
If it can make your life better, you'll never see it.
But I think they did.
Because they need us
They
in
gave
a
me like a
state of
little
constant
window
submission.
into what it could do. That it could notice that the floor. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
look how cool this is. It can tell your floor is dirty. What else can it tell? What else does it know?
Too much.
Like, that's crazy that it can look at a picture and be like, yeah, that's a dirty.
Yeah.
So like there's been a saying so far over at the Open Source AI Foundation is that our job is to stop the robots from becoming more scary than the nukes. But if the robot can fire the nukes, okay,
then we're fucked.
So like that's literally our like tagline is our job is to stop the robots from becoming scarier than the nukes. That's what we're trying to do, right? The problem is that right now our government is going to create a bunch of monopolies. And those monopolies will have access because the government is eliminating jobs and switching to using a bunch of AI to analyze all of their problems, only for their own ability to retain more power, not to actually help their constituents, which is amazing.
Sounds like Netanyahu.
But
Netanyahu could do with using a little
He
more
sounds
AI.
like an AI,
He
like
could
a
have
bad
a few
AI.
more AI
He
chat
does.
GPT
Yeah.
conversations. Might help him out.
Is he still-
his is
You almost
glitching.
described it to a
His is
T.
more like a stuck CD that just keeps going.
Did you guys
And in
believe-
3 to 7 months, and in 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 3 to 7 months, there will be nuclear weapons. In 3 to
Can
7
you
months.
believe that I couldn't believe, I thought it was fake when I first saw it. He got on TV and he said, there's a price to war. Did you see this?
No.
They were all suffering. His son had to cancel his wedding.
Oh, boo hoo.
Oh.
And he had to
my
fly to Greece
God.
while his people got.
Yeah,
That's
Netanyahu, if you're watching this, go fuck yourself.
That's crazy.
War criminal.
Like, how could you say that with a straight
Wait, can I
face?
say that?
That's crazy.
So
Oh.
bonkers.
He might
5,000.
bleep
My
you.
son.
I'm
had
Sorry,
to
I'm
What's that?
sorry.
You'll decide if you.
Yeah,
bleep
just,
him later.
no.
Just check it later.
Yeah, check it later. Sorry.
Oh, post it?
No. We said you might want to bleep that later.
Yeah, I just.
So that you don't get.
Yeah, I don't want you to-
What did you
trouble.
say?
We'll tell you later.
We'll tell you later.
I have a positive idea for AI
Sorry.
to end the AI fears.
Yeah.
Or not end the AI fears, but like to go out on the deep end. I listened to a lot of Art Bell. He did a radio
3
show
rules
way back
safe.
in the day. He said way back when, this was like 15 years ago, they're talking about AI, which was kind of crazy to me because I thought that was like a recent thing that we started
Right.
talking about. But he said, don't worry. He had like this caller who's like totally crazy. It's all conspiracy theory, UFO stuff, right? And this caller was like, don't worry. I'm from the future. So he knows about AI in the future. He says, the way AI works, and the aliens will teach you this eventually, is that the aliens that we were seeing, the grays and stuff, that those were robot AIs. And there's like other aliens that were organic, like aliens, like people, right? Like us.
Cool.
But that they had to keep those people because if they didn't have humans to run the AI aliens, the AI aliens always killed themselves. That reality was too bleak and that you had to have humanity to have this unnatural hope and belief. And they
Then I
believed
guess
in
we better get fucking.
we better stay
Right.
positive.
God
But
damn.
that to keep it going and that otherwise they wouldn't run without it.
We can chill. We can be done.
You tell me. I don't know.
Oh,
how you
I mean,
wanna
we've had a
wrap
great
it
I
up.
didn't
conversation.
God.
I was saying I can't believe that this is still even recorded.
I'm surprised I'm not. Yeah. Oh,
It was
yeah.
fun.
Would you have like a 10 trillion
Like,
terabyte
we
hard
should try
drive?
it on something happier than that. My God.
Well, at least I said it during.
We
the
got
end.
some good stuff.
Yeah, I
Oh.
think so too.
That was a
I
great
appreciate the
conversation.
comment.
This was so fun.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think
Seriously, it's not all doom and gloom though. I actually think we can do this. It's not easy because you have to recognize what is doom and what is gloom to get past that and recognize that unfortunately, if we want it to be positive, we actually have to start acting.
Yeah.
We can't just talk about acting.
But it's
I
really,
I
We have to
totally
it's
agree.
really cool because like we get to do this.
We
Like,
do this.
Get to talk.
Yeah.
All day, every day, we do this.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's
I
amazing.
just am like I'm always the person once it gets too doom and gloomy, I start
Yeah,
getting
me too.
optimistic.
Me
I'm
too.
like, no, I can't go there.
Yeah, I can't either.
But
Not that I can't. I'm like, I can
That's
get there
good.
and then I bounce off.
Yeah.
I want that, but we also have to recognize those that can't. And we have to meet them where they're. One of my, you know what I want to say is
The
like,
people who we always count out, though, are the ones that do.
so like one of the things that is a struggle for me that I want to tell everybody is that so many people come for me when I go to a podcast or someplace they don't like. So many people were upset when I was on Candace Owens or when I was on Tim Pool. So many people were upset when I was on some of the more liberal podcasts that I've done, right? And I remind everybody that like we've been conditioned to get mad about somebody talking in a way or in a place that you don't approve of because you've been conditioned to hate more than to hope. Okay?
That part.
And what I'm going to say is that if we want things to change, you can't do it in your echo chamber.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Nope.
All right? But what you can do is you can change the hearts and minds of those that disagree with you by going where they are and speaking to them. I don't go to the left and right podcasts because I feel like I am trying to pander to one or the other. Yeah. It's because if I don't go, I'm not left or right. And so if I don't go to where those are that I need to change the hearts and minds of, then I've already lost the battle. You have to go and you have to meet people where they are if you want to change their hearts and minds. And that's the only way to change anything. And so I really encourage everybody, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you, to get out of your echo chamber and have conversations no matter how hard they are. And really to look for opportunities to find out where you don't disagree. Stop talking about the shit you know you disagree on. Because that's just what you disagree on. You need to start looking at what you agree on. Because there's a lot of it. 81 to 93%. And that's where the possibility is that we could actually fix these things.
Sure.
It lives in that 81 to 93%. That's a big percentage. Don't be divided by the 3.5.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I love it. All right, this is Banter for the People live at I almost said Comic-Con, VidCon.
VidCon.
Oh God.
I forgot where we
Appreciate
were.
you all. God bless. Over and out, and we are out of here.
Bye.